please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start on this side today with introductions.
I'm Jenna Castelluccio. I'm Student Council President.
Sarah Williams, Blackstone.
Jack Keefe, Blackstone.
Jane Reggio, Millville.
Erin Panacco, Millville.
Tara Larkin, Millville.
Tammy Lemieux, Blackstone.
Danielle Catalano, Student Council Vice President.
Matt Aaronworth, Assistant Superintendent.
Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
Great, thank you. Jenna, Danielle, who?
So the new year has been pretty eventful at BMR. Midterms were in the middle of January, so every kid was getting prepared for them in their classes. These exams are for every student to take to measure where they were in the halfway point of the school year in all their classes. They went excellent this year, and every single student put their best effort in and hardest work. The jazz band recently had a jazz performance at the Stadium Theater, which went really well. The show was featured jazz bands from all around Blackstone Valley, and they gave an audience a night of nice jazz music for people of all ages. The jazz band has their first competition on March 6th. Also, the Winter Winds program has been practicing their show extremely hard. They practice every single Tuesday and Thursday night. Their first competition is March 16th in Cranston, Rhode Island. They will also be performing at the BMMA Craft Fair, being held on March 3rd, along with the school's jazz bands, brass and woodwind choirs, and color guard.
A group of kids from the Student Council are going to a state conference on March 6th through the 8th in Cape Cod. The conference is called MASC. They will be staying there for 3 days, doing workshops and very fun activities to build leadership skills and to bring back fun ideas to the council. This is an annual conference that the Student Council attends every year along with students from schools all around Massachusetts. It is a very full and eventful 3 days that teaches the students what it means to be an amazing leader and how to have an important role in their community. Everyone who is going is really excited for that in a few weeks. There's an upcoming home girls basketball game, February 15th. This game is a senior game where the senior athletes of each team can be recognized and cheered on. Some other upcoming events are Mr. BMR, which is on March 13th. Boys from all grades compete in this funny talent show to see who will be crowned the new Mr. BMR for 2019. That's all we have for now. We hope you have an amazing Valentine's Day and an even better February vacation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you doing anything for February vacation?
Resting up for the next upcoming months of school.
Yeah.
How about you? Same?
Yeah, same. I was supposed to go to Florida, but that didn't
work?
Yeah, no.
No college tours?
No, I already know what college I'm
Where
going
are you
to.
going to go?
University of New Haven.
Wow.
Criminal
Congratulations.
justice, that's what I want.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how many more days till graduation then?
I don't know. Hopefully soon. Like 80 maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
So we passed the 100th day then.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
I think it was last week, right?
Last week.
Yeah, it was.
Less than 80 for you.
Yes.
There you go. Any?
For you, Danielle.
Depends on snow days.
Plus school
Yes,
days.
true.
She's hoping you call them. She's hoping you don't.
Very true, very true.
Right?
Very true.
You should. My Twitter following's like really shot up there after the first.
I bet you.
I'm like, who are all these people?
The critique at the Lemieux household is that you're doing a good job.
Oh, good. All right. Well, hey, that's important, right? There is one student that keeps instant messaging me. Yeah.
Can you call one? Can you call
Oh
one?
yeah,
Can you
and
call
it's
one?
like sunny and 40. You know, like, well, it would have to be snowing for me to do that.
It's not even Megan Anderson who has since
Yeah,
moved
no,
on.
it's not. There
Unless
used to be a
she's wanting 'em
famous
from
one.
I'm
college.
excited if they're like, oh, we don't want any. It's a Friday,
Yeah.
and so.
I've
Kinda
got the
stuck
senior
on that
too, who's
this
also
year.
like, why aren't there any snow?
Why aren't there any, right? Yeah. I had to pay my dues. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
We have consent agenda A this week. This meeting, it includes warrants, meetings of the January 9th school committee meeting, a field trip, and a facilities use. Is that you on there or something?
I have both of these.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
And we need to
Hold
see
the
a signed
presses.
copy.
I'll have to look, but anyway. Can we move the whole agenda? Was everybody here at the 9th meeting? Yes, 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 yes. Yes?
There's just a request
Yep,
to
all 8 of us.
waive. Did you?
We'll do that separate then.
The use of facilities.
Okay, we'll do
That'll
that
be
separate. So I'll entertain a motion for the warrants, field trip, and minutes of the January 9th.
So move.
Moved by Jack,
Second.
second by Tammy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Facility use. We have a request from the dance company to use the auditorium
Yes.
on such and such, May 17th and May 18th. And they are asking for a waiver of the fee.
It's a benefit.
Benefit.
So how does it work? When we waive the fee, do they pay the custodian fee? Or is that one and the same? I'm assuming it's a weekend.
I
It
I
usually says what the fee
believe,
is.
let's see,
Custodian's usually present.
On the
They're
weekend?
definitely going to have them, but
They have to open the building.
Oh, right. So that's what I'm saying, is that, does the fee pay the custodian, or is there a separate custodian fee?
I thought it was separate, but I don't see it on here.
Yeah, usually it's for the space, and then they pay the
Right.
custodial.
Okay,
So my guess, and I'll double check, but my guess is the space would be free, but they'd have to pay for the custodial.
okay.
But I can find that
maybe we
out.
should word that motion that way, maybe.
Yes, we can do that.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the use of facilities for the dance company for May 17th and 18th, waiving the fee for the facility, but still implementing the custodial fee.
So moved.
Okay. And Tammy, you second?
Second.
Okay.
I
So it was moved by Aaron, seconded by Tammy, to approve the use of the auditorium and cafeteria on Friday, May 17th, Saturday, May 18th, for a benefit performance from the dance company. We would waive their usage fee, but they would still be required to pay for any custodial services they required that evening. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great. School committee. We have we have an unforeseen issue and we have a vacancy. So at our workshop last week, we accepted the resignation of Bethany Dutton. Very sorry to see her go. I think she was a great addition to our school committee, but she's had some personal family issues. And so we are looking to find a Blackstone resident who would be willing to serve in that role until the next election. And it won't be this election, it will be the actual next election, April of
2020.
2020, right, April 2020. So if anyone is interested, they should send a letter to the Blackstone Board of Selectmen, and once we have received those applications, the Blackstone members of this committee and the Blackstone Board of Selectmen will meet together to discuss any applicants and choose a member for our committee. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. We also had a meeting of a group of individuals interested in the creation of a regional agreement amendment committee. That's a committee put together by the school committee to review the regional agreement as a governance document through the Department of Education. And we are looking to create that regional agreement committee that would include one member from the Board of Selectmen and Finance committees from each member town, one school committee member from each member town, one of which will serve as the chair of the committee, one parent and one community member from each community, each town, and the superintendent and the assistant superintendent of finance would serve as committee members to the committee, and the chair of the school committee would serve in an advisory role. And we have to officially adopt that committee so that we can start to ask people to serve on it. We are looking to see if it's feasible to use a consultant from the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, because they do that as part of their services, and that person would really coordinate that process for us. So if somebody would like to make a motion to create that committee?
So moved.
Moved by Sarah. Anybody second? Second by Aaron. Any discussion? Did anybody have any questions about it? Go ahead.
No, I'm great. Great.
How many people were here for the meeting on Monday?
Actually, pretty good, yeah.
Quite a few.
Yeah, more than the
report was
people on
10.
this list. What?
My reporter said 10.
That would be me.
What? Yeah,
10 people.
yeah.
There are 10 of us.
There were 10? Okay, yeah, that was pretty good.
Roving reporter.
So, and, yeah, Sarah has graciously agreed to chair it.
Always gracious.
Always gracious. No looks, no funny eye rolls or anything.
I don't do that.
Any other questions, discussion?
Send out social media requests for people to send.
Yes, so if there's
to-
a parent, so they have to be a parent of a current student in the district, and then a community member, that does not necessarily have to be a parent from each one, and if they are interested, they would just send an email or a letter to me, and then we as a committee would select those representatives. And we'll select our school committee people as well, but we kind of did last night, so unless somebody really wants to do it.
Does it rhyme? Is it Sarah and Tara?
It does. It does. It rhymes well. It was,
Chair and not chair.
it was an interesting discussion. There was a great discussion on whether it needed to go governance-wise or whether it needed to go kind of as it did similarly the last time we went through the process. And I will say there was not agreement, and hence the direction for having a consultant guide us. Because I think that will help us define what the role really needs to be, at least in bringing it up to date, making sure we're meeting Massachusetts laws and so forth and so on. So,
And do we need to reach out to the boards of selectmen and finance committees to get their people?
so yes, I have drafted a letter. I have not sent it till we approved having a committee, but I have drafted a letter to do that, although I know that the Millville representative was bringing it to his board tonight to select a person, so I think they're good. All right. Those in favor of creating a regional agreement amendment committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so I will get those letters out, and we will do that, and I have something else, but it can wait till later, so you are on, Dr. Spalko.
Reggio. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. Good to see you all. We have a fairly meaty agenda, I guess, under superintendent report. First, we just want to acknowledge the latest inductees into our Athletic Hall of Fame. Tony Killian, who is one of our community members, Brett Buskey, who is a class of 2011, was being inducted for track and field, Kevin Powers, class of 2006, being inducted for basketball, Michael Trudell, class of 1992, being inducted for basketball, and Leslie Kelly, class of 1985, being inducted for field hockey, basketball, and track and field. So just congratulations to all of our athletes for being inducted into the BMR Athletic Hall of Fame. Moving on, the Worcester County Superintendent Association Scholar recipient, Rebecca St. Amat, she will actually be here next month. She unfortunately wasn't able to make it this evening, so we will have her before the committee in March to say a few words and recognize her for her efforts. The first formal presentation this evening is around the superintendent's entry plan, specifically the report of findings, as it is being referred to. And so you all have at your seats this evening a packet that looks like this. I put it there when just before we got rolling, and it's up on the screen for folks at home or the individuals that are here. And so I just want to put a little context to this document so everybody has an understanding that might be viewing this from home. In August, I believe it was August 16th, I had presented to the school committee a entry plan that would outline essentially my work in terms of really getting to know the BMR community and essentially the methods in which that I would do that. And so, as you know, I've spent the last, at this point, to be frank, the last year, and actually a little bit more than that, really studying and getting to know both Blackstone and Millville, and of course the school district. And so tonight's report is really important because this is, the summary of, so what did I find during this process? In your packets, you have an actual report that I had written. It does need a good polishing still and some editing and such before it goes live. I'm sure.
So you don't want my comments on those?
Nope, it's okay. I'll happily take them.
No.
But it does need to be edited still. But I wanted to get the document to the committee. I thought it was really important that we come back to the committee to really talk about, so, what was out there? What did I hear? What did I see? What did I learn? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the so what, now what? What does all this mean, and where do we go from here? And so I already essentially provided this context of the why, the how, the what of the actual process itself, and so I won't belabor the point. But I think one of the important pieces to really look at is this piece around the how. And so for me, it was really important to ask a lot of questions to kids, to teachers, to support staff, to leadership, to, of course, our district governance, to our town leadership, our community members, parents, families, caregivers, et cetera. And so I think out of all of what I read and I saw and I've done, I think those conversations, of which there have been dozens and dozens of those, were probably the most impactful to really get a good sense of at least the perception of kind of where things are for our school district. And of course, the what just highlights those key questions that really anchored most of those conversations. And those conversations might have looked a little different in terms of the specific questions, but they were all tethered back to these three kind of driving questions, if you will.
Before you move on.
Please.
So you, up in this document and in the document that we received, and in messages that you've given us before, you've centered around how do we bring about change that needs to close the gap? And it's up there too.
Yes.
Changes needed to close the gap. What gap are you talking? Are you talking about gap between students, gap between the state, gap between, what are you talking about?
So that word gap is defined in a multitude of ways.
Okay.
So probably the most common reference to that would be the achievement gap. And a lot of folks, I think, look at that in terms of how do we narrow the gap between all students in our district. So those students that are performing at higher levels to those kids that are performing at lower levels and everything in between. So that certainly is one way to look at that. I think from a more expanded definition, I'm also looking at why is it that BMR is performing in one particular place as compared to the state? Why is it performing in one particular place as compared to other districts within our region or other similar districts? So that is a little bit of a larger definition for me. The other piece to this that I was looking for is what are specific gaps in services, and not just academic services.
Yep.
But so where are and what does the service delivery model look like for kids from a teaching and learning perspective, but also from a social, emotional, mental health, behavioral, what is the way we're approaching the whole child? And then the last piece is what are the fiscal gaps that we have that are supporting where we are, but not necessarily taking us all the way to where we need to be, financially speaking, with our work. Does that answer that question,
It does,
Jane?
thank you.
Okay. The report overview, and again, this is really for our folks at home or anybody that would want to pick up the document and essentially look through it and read it. But we really tried to summarize it in a few key ways. And so there's an introduction to the overall findings. There's some general background and data about the district. Of course, our district's mission and vision and core values, a little bit about our governance structure, a little bit about the leadership team, student information from enrollment to mobility. I tried to find information that I also thought the community would find helpful to take a look at in terms of, just, who are the students that we're educating, and what does that look like at a higher level for the district as a whole. There is a little bit about student discipline and attendance, our school choice history, the numbers of kids that are opting into our district, and those that are leaving our district for other opportunities. A very brief piece on facilities and our enrollment in each building, a little bit of an overview on planning and budget, our academic performance, grad rates, advanced placement, and then a summary of our focus group data. And so those focus groups consisted of students and teachers and parents. And so this is really kind of the meat, if you will, of what I delved into. And so you may be wondering, well, what is it you found? What were some of the general patterns and trends? And so here, essentially, is an outline of our strengths. And I want to be really clear about this piece because you will notice when you read through this document that some of these strengths identified here are clearly called out, almost verbatim. Some of them are not. They're implied, and you can infer those, some of the strengths as you're reading through. And a couple of things weren't actually mentioned in there. It didn't necessarily come up in terms of the focus of that document. But I did want to call them out here because I think it's important to note we have a significant number of strengths as a school district. And I certainly won't sit here and read all these to you. But you can see that they're really grouped into, kind of the people side of the work. And so the fact that we've got this really strong history and passion and pride for our work in our communities. And those that attended the regional agreement meeting heard that. I mean, it came out, I think some of those exact words, as a matter of fact, were shared during that. And having that caring, compassionate group of students and staff. And, in parentheses, there's a few different pieces of evidence that led me to be able to identify these as strengths. Our communities want great schools. They want kid-focused schools. We have some curriculum in place. We have some resources in place. We know not everything, but we do have some pieces that are there, some pieces of the puzzle. Our technology at the secondary level, and then increased technology at the elementary. I think the fact that we're one-to-one at the middle and high school is significant. I think that's important. That will help us really leverage some of the teaching and learning work we want to do moving forward. Our educators don't have all the time they need to work collaboratively, but they have some. And teachers really value that time with their colleagues in those professional learning communities and that staff development to have those conversations about teaching and learning in students. We have a strong assessment system in place. It's at its infancy in terms of the implementation. We did a little bit of a reset, as the committee knows, this year with STAR. And we had a pilot of the early literacy aspect of STAR at the first grade level. That was at no cost. We were able to pilot that at both Millville and the complex. And that was very cool to look at some of the data and really get a sense of how our youngest readers at that first grade level really progressing. The teachers at the classrooms that piloted that, it was just really awesome to see them using this information to help them plan and looking at how can we target certain skills for certain kids and really get those kiddos on track. So that was really great. Our teacher leadership opportunities have increased significantly across all schools. It's very valued. As a matter of fact, our principals, all of them, took teachers that were interested to go see instructional leadership teams in action today at Hudson Public Schools during the second half of the day. They had a early release day as part of their PD plan in Hudson, and our principals and a few teachers from each of the buildings that are interested in some of the instructional leadership teamwork, they took a field trip and they went and saw an elementary school and they saw a middle school that I believe is in their second year of implementation. So that's awesome, that we've had these opportunities for teachers. And then the last part, this to me always puts a smile on my face because our kids are ready to learn. And I say that because there are classrooms and schools and districts, et cetera, where it's a struggle to get the kids even compliant. It's a struggle to get them in groups or seated and focused and ready. Our kids are all of those things. They are seated, they're ready, they're prepared. And so for me, seeing that through observations and having conversations with kids, and this is a huge thing that I noticed here, when you talk to kids and say, what are you working on? For the majority of the time, the kids won't say, oh, page 10. They'll say, oh, we're adding fractions with different denominators. Like, bingo. That to me says these kids are ready to learn. They can tell you what they're learning. And it's not just an exercise of compliance. So I think it's important to identify those strengths right up front because we do have a lot of good things in place and a lot of good things moving. And so what are strengths without opportunities? So opportunities for improvement. And I do want to kind of walk through each one of these. And you have heard these before, and so but I do think they're worth noting. Enhancing our existing curriculum. I think that's key. We have some curriculum in place. We have some that's totally missing. So making sure that we have all the curriculum in place that we need and the appropriate resources in place for that. Building on our core instruction and really having a deep emphasis on teaching and learning. And with that, not just looking at that core, and we're going to hear a little bit later about the and more, all of the tiered intervention work that needs to be in place to make sure that we're providing those tier 2 and tier 3 interventions for students that need that extra boost. So we need to build on what we have. We need to address the deficits in student programming, teaching and learning models, and the overall operations of our special education department and the overall structure of that. Again, we're going to hear about that a little bit later. But specifically, we're talking about department structure, co-teaching model, out-of-district placements. And I think it's important that I have these descriptors here because this isn't just, these aren't just words. This is, from our perspective, some of the specifics that we need to be delving into. Not just lip service, I guess, is what I'm saying. Looking at that aligned approach to supporting non-academic needs. And so, again, what are we talking about? Social, emotional, mental, and behavioral health and development of our kids. We know if we don't have that piece right, the kids aren't going to be learning. They just won't. And also looking at our attendance. You probably noticed in the full report, we do have some distinct attendance patterns that need to be addressed. And so we need to do that. And that last focus area or opportunity is to harness that community passion and energy and really start thinking creatively about some of the gaps that we have and how do we address those. And so these are the opportunities. And so as a result, this is not a new document. It's funny, as I was going over this with Mr. Aaronworth earlier, we got to this slide and he said, yeah, we've seen this a million times. And so I said to him, yes, that's great. And so that's what we want people to be saying because this is our work. This is what we're doing. We're looking to improve all outcomes for kids and we're doing it in these 4 areas. And these 4 areas were driven from these 2 slides, these general patterns and trends, with, of course, the specifics being derived from the entry planning work and the document that's in front of all of you this evening. And then, of course, my favorite part, the so what now what. So where do we go? What happens next? So you will notice there is an arrow to the left of this slide because this is a linear process in a sequential one. And so the next step in this work, we as a leadership team will be creating a theory of action. If we do all these things, then this will happen. We will then develop what we will call a blueprint for district improvement. What would also, or formerly be known, I guess, as kind of a district improvement plan or strategic plan. This is our blueprint. And I think a blueprint is a very strategic term on our behalf because we are the district leadership team and the educators from across the district, along with the school committee, are the architects of that plan. And we need to design that plan based on those 4 strategic areas. From that plan, we will then establish a community promise. And so we will develop these goals or benchmarks in each one of those 4 areas that we will put out to the community as our promise to them for how we will be improving outcomes for all of our kids in BMR. And last but certainly not least, from there, our school improvement plans will be developed, and our professional development plans with that as well, by our school-based leadership teams that will be directly tethered back to that district blueprint that's driven from our strategy of those 4 areas and our theory of action. And so I wanted to give the committee and those that are viewing kind of a sense of, well, you know, A, why did you kind of put this document together, right? And so, you know, with that document, where do we go? And so I needed to do that work because I cannot come into BMR and assume anything. I have to study. I have to listen. I have to observe. I have to read. I have to ask a lot of questions. And so this report is kind of a summation of that and all the data that drove us to that improvement strategy, which will then take us through this process to create essentially a guide that will govern and or put the guardrails up, if you will, around our work for the next 3 years. If there are questions or thoughts or comments on.
Anybody have any? I took a lot of notes.
There's a lot of editing to do in the report.
No, that's not it. No. I mean, some is editing, likeling. I think you
Yes,
meant lifelong.
yeah,
but-
lifelong. Yes,
But I appreciated the sentiment that we have to focus this with high expectations. Because I think, you know, sometimes we look to just be average, and I think we can do better than that. Because I do think when you encourage people to achieve and you set the bar really high, they reach for it. And I think we're seeing that in some of the groups that we'll see later today.
yeah, absolutely.
I am concerned about the attendance and the discipline from a gender issue. So I guess I am curious what the plans may come out as a result of that.
Yeah, and so I think we are all a little, you know, concerned with that. So the interesting kind of piece of this is we have, you know, about 1,750 kids in our district, and of that, or close to 1,800, of that, we only disciplined 70 last year. And of those 70, 54 were boys. And so that definitely speaks to an issue. It also goes back, Jane, to your question about gaps. And when you're looking at social, emotional, mental, and behavioral health, we're not getting under the surface of that. I think from the time I've spent in our schools and the many conversations I have had with our staff, they do an excellent job at managing the issues and supporting the student through the issues. I think where we need to go next is how do we take the proactive measure and try to address the issues ahead of time to make sure that we're setting up the student for success with that. So I think there's a lot of front loading to do, and not just responding, if that makes sense. It's not just the reactive stuff, but
Right.
we got to get good at being really proactive.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if in your research you found, we certainly have more students leaving the district than we have arriving in or choicing in. Do we do any surveys of why students choose the places that they choose, that you found?
No, nothing that I found. Not yet, anyhow. I certainly couldn't find anything. You know, obviously the schools that are offering something different, you know, I think we could probably speculate on some of those. But the kids that are choicing into a typical comprehensive district like ours,
Right.
you know, I'm not entirely sure about, you know, what's there that's making them choose something different. I've heard anecdotally things like, you know, athletics or clubs or, you know, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I also think that, you know, we said this at the last budget workshop, you know, we need our piece that really kind of has us stand out from the pack. And so I think we are continuing to kind of find out, well, what is that niche or what is that thing? in addition to just being a really strong performing comprehensive school department, school district. But, you know, like, what is the specialty that we can bring to the table that will help increase those out-of-district numbers and bring folks in? And what can we do to try to keep our kids here? You know, it is hard once a student leaves to get them back, but, you know, as Mr. Aaronworth and I were talking about today, you know, we need to have a really strong plan to keep our kids with us that are here.
Anybody have any questions?
I think the other important gender-based fact in this data that was provided today is on page 12, which talks about the advanced placement.
Yeah.
Our male exam participants, the number is 27, while our female is 69.
Right.
So, you know, conversely to the discipline and the attendance and sort of that piece of things, why also aren't they taking these advanced placement courses?
And I just wrote a little happy face, funny smile. I said, because they're the ones in trouble all the time. But I did write that same kind of note. And I'm also curious, the percentage of the people that choice out, the percentage of male and female.
Well, we could find that. Yeah.
I'm curious if
If we're going into that part, could we find out what grades they're choosing too?
Yeah, we have all that information. Yep.
because I agree with Tammy. I'm curious why, I mean, that's significant, 2769?
Yeah, that jumped out at us too. You know, I think, and again, I think when we talk about those, you know, the kind of the gaps that we discussed earlier, it warrants a really deep look, in particular at how we're working with our males. I mean, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You notice patterns with discipline, you notice patterns with attendance, and then, of course, academics. You can see it reflected in the AP enrollment, for sure.
And I do think it's, again, that issue is bigger than us. I mean, as a teacher, I can't tell you how many times in the last 15 years I've heard, well, he's a boy.
Oh,
And it's like, well, yeah, but,
okay.
you know, I don't know what that means, really. When it's like an excuse for something, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
True. But I will say, in my tenure, specifically with the school committee, I've seen as many, if not more, well, probably as many male valedictorians as female. So somebody thinks it's important.
Right.
We had this discussion with the Blackstone Valley Curriculum Directors group I'm part of, and we, at the Superintendent Scholar Lunch, you know, all of Worcester County is there, and the majority, not all, but the majority of the recipients were young ladies. And so that was, you know, that stood out.
The other thing that jumped out at me is that this report, and rightly so, is very teaching and learning focused, and your plan going forward is very teaching and learning focused, and I think we have to go there. But I think we also have to have a deep dive into the facilities as well, and I don't know that has to necessarily come from your perspective, maybe Matt's, but we need a long-range plan there as well, because I wonder if some people are choosing to other places because the places are just prettier, and they're newer, and there really is a science lab, or there really is a oscillating, whatever that thing was, that wave machine, whatever it was.
An oscilloscope.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Science Major.
Well, based on what your theory is, Jane, just looking at the school choice history, I think the newest high school
Uxbridge.
is Uxbridge, and it's the largest one.
And it's our what?
It doesn't mean they're all in high school, though.
No.
The largest number.
It was 24 this year.
Yeah.
And it's projected at oh no, it's not
It
this
is
year.
school choice.
18 is this year.
That's,
Is
they're
that
coming
in?
here.
Oh, sorry, they like us better.
Yeah, they're leaving them to come to us. But their number out is pretty good, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt and I were actually discussing that just today, as a matter of fact, that once we work through our budget cycle and we get through this kind of leg of the work, that we need to have a comprehensive facilities
Yeah.
plan in
Yeah.
place. We just do, and I think it connects directly to the regional agreement and open space and real estate, and I think it fits in a bigger picture,
I agree.
yeah.
What's the tech virtual school? Do they homeschool like that?
Yeah, so we did a little bit of research on that. So that is really interesting. So that is an online school that actually has these kind of clusters of sites where kids can go to. It is considered school choice, and it is more expensive than your typical school choice. So we were talking about this at the
do we
last
pay it?
meeting. So at the last meeting, we were talking about school choice, and we pay $5,000 for every child who leaves. It's not the total 13,500, it's 5,000, plus whatever special ed costs and such we need to cover with that. But for this is a state-offered online program that kids can choice into at the tune of, was it 8,500?
Yep, almost 9,000.
Yep, just about 9,000, and there's other like registration fees and those kinds of things. And so, yeah, so kids, it's the TECA program, kids can opt into that, but it's considered school choice, not homeschool, and
At a different rate.
at a higher rate,
Did
yes.
they say why?
They did not.
Oh,
There
okay.
were administrative costs and programmatic costs, but
And it's interesting because it's an
As
online
opposed
program
to other school districts?
where there's no,
Dang.
yeah.
Huh, interesting, interesting.
So it is, so the school choice fee is $5,000 per child that leaves, plus the special ed costs we have to cover in whatever district they're going to. And for this, it's 80, it was just under 9,000. It was like 8,500 or 8,750 or something like that. It was, just under $9,000.
Does it appear to be something that you could offer in-house, like a tech virtual school academy of BMR?
Yeah, so we're studying Summit when we're looking, not that that's the answer to that,
I
but
think the tech word is confusing. It's not a
I know,
tech
is
school.
it a tech school?
No,
or
it's
is it
like
just
a virtual,
It's
a virtual,
like Edgenuity or
That's their
whatever we
abbreviation.
use, VHS online, but.
so we have a
something
VHS, yeah,
different.
so it's, I would say it's more in line with VHS than it is with a Summit. VHS is all, so the interesting thing, VHS is truly an online class. Summit is not. Summit's a personalized learning model. It's totally different. And so Summit's more in between. So TECA and VHS are all online classes.
so I
What's the-
apologize, I have the specific number. It was 8190 plus a 75 administrative fee for each student compared to the 5,000.
Wow.
They can also charge a special education increment for students on IEPs.
So what's the difference between VHS, that's by class, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a course.
It's an
That's
actual online
yeah.
course. And so this is all online coursework.
We do that during the school day, right, VHS is during the school day.
Yes.
Oh, here, yes.
Yeah.
Virtual high
TECA you can do any time, unless you opt to plug into one of these regional, which you can. I mean, they're offered, I think they're offered all over the place, as a matter of fact. There's one, I think it's Milford, the one I'm thinking of. It's close.
So that's different than the Milford number?
Yep.
Like, this just happens to be in Milford,
happens to
but
be
it's
there,
not
yeah.
Milford? Okay. Because maybe that answered my question as to why people are going to Milford.
Anyone else? I truly, really appreciate this, for those people that will choose to read the entire document, it really is pointed. It really hits home on a lot of issues that I think some of us believed but weren't really sure. And I appreciate the kind of push towards success, because I think that as I've been studying the budget and researching the budget, I know that adding money doesn't automatically add success, but adding planning, adding structure, adding higher expectations for the students and the community members to participate in that, that's what I think brings success. And I think this really outlines that we have a lot of work to do, but we have a lot of strengths that are in place. And the goal here is not to just make people happy. You know, it's not to just, you know, everybody feel good, everybody have a great experience while they're here. The goal clearly comes out that we have to, you know, set high expectations and require tough choices and require the supports that are necessary to move the district forward. And so I appreciate this work that was done, because it means we're all going to work a lot harder, but, you know, it's all good. No. Yes.
Can I just add, I know you said that it still has drafts to come.
Yes.
I would like to see this out and available for budget season before town meetings, just because I feel that anyone that takes the time to read through this is going to get a true snapshot of what we are, what we have, what we need. It's just a lot of good information in here, and I think it could benefit that process.
Absolutely.
And thank you for your time that you put into that.
I just want to say that this is the first time that we're getting true numbers with possible solutions to the good and bad of those numbers. And, you know, I think at the end of this report, Jason has included some parent feedback and things. And I can appreciate the fact that he included some negative stuff in here as well, so that, you know, it's not sugar-coated.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yep.
And to Erin's point, one of the comments that they list in here is sort of, you know, we know the problem, but we're throwing money at it. I think this breakdown clearly says that we're not just trying to throw some money at something. We're doing a planned, plotted, you know, work.
And the piece that comes next, the district improvement plan, I think has to go hand in hand with this in terms of what people need to read. So they see this is the plan, these are the finances then tied to the plan. So.
Yeah, and the comment that jumped out at me the most, I hear it every day, all day, to be frank, was the father who said, "How long is it going to take you to fix this place?" And I said, whoa, 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 there is no me to fix anything.
Yeah.
This is a community, team, district effort. And so I think, I just want to underscore that, because I don't have a cape. So, nope, no cape. So we are only going to get this.
Crest for the T-shirt.
I don't want a crest. But my point is, this has to be a team, community effort. And so, you know, I just want to underscore that and really appreciate the work that folks have done, the leadership team and others, the teachers that folks have already done to really approach doing our work different. And so, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that.
And it's not like, and I think the other thing is, it's not like the principals, the teachers that have been at this for the last 10 years haven't tried to meet the needs of our
absolutely,
students
right.
and our community. But when you don't have, if everybody's not sort of on the same page, the disconnect between the grades, between the schools becomes more apparent. So they have fought the fight for many years, and with what they had, and sometimes what they had wasn't enough to do what they needed to do. But I think right now we have a more concentrated effort of working together and aligning up and down and across, and I think that's going to make a big difference.
One district, one direction, so good point, Tina. Okay.
All right, so moving on to the next item, my mid-year evaluation. And so,
Can I say something
Please.
before you start?
Yeah.
Okay, so from a school committee perspective, we are required by state law to evaluate our superintendent in an open meeting session. When Dr. DeFalco was hired, that was very important to him, that he wanted that process done with a specific mid-year cycle and an end of the year. And the mid-year is kind of, as educators, we talk about formative and summative, and as lay people, we got no idea what that means. But essentially, this is the formative part, where we are getting a sense of what has been going on towards the goals, some of the evidence that's presented, and as school committee members, you not only have the packet that Dr. DeFalco will go over, but you have kind of what those goals and standards and indicators were, if you have any comments on any of them as he's going through, and whether you believe he's on target, off target. Well, we haven't started that yet because we don't have the data to address it. That will be compiled, and at our next meeting, we'll present an overall school committee mid-year sense of where you are. So, you're on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And so, as you know, we're starting with our improvement strategy. Yes, Matt, there it is again.
It's famous.
Different colors, yeah, but it's the same focus. And again, I think it's important to note just because that anchors all the work that we do. And so I believe it was in November the school committee approved the goals for this year. And essentially the format of this is the approved goal, and then the evidence summary, and then the evidence behind that. And so the PowerPoint is a little bit different for the student learning goal because of how we're looking at what we set as targets for end of year, but we're doing kind of a check-in to say, well, how are we doing? Are we on progress? And we used our STAR assessment system as the kind of benchmark, if you will, or the way we're measuring our progress towards students meeting or exceeding grade level expectations, both in literacy and in math. And as you know, the goals that we set are very assertive goals. They reference all students moving and growing, and I say that as an educator, but also as a parent. They need to be around all kids. If we set goals around, only 20% of the kids move or only 80% of the kids do this, I always wonder as a parent, well, which bucket is my kid in? Is he in the 20% that are not moving or the 80% that you're going to help move? So while the targets might seem assertive, we have to build our work around all kids, and they deserve that. So the student learning goal is framed out here in these 4 areas, and then you will see our internal assessment system, STAR, that really outlines progress towards those. What we will do for my end-of-year evaluation, I will have each sub-goal and then the data right under it. Okay. I did this one a little bit different because it's mid-year, and we're really just trying to take a dipstick to see if we're kind of on track or not. But fast forwarding to my end-of-year evaluation, I will have these broken down with the data right under it. So as I mentioned, we're using STAR as the core assessment that we're using to check in on our progress. And so what we have here is our tested grades, which is 2 through 9, our beginning of year to middle of year, percentage of kids across all grade levels meeting or exceeding the grade level expectations, and then, of course, the difference column. What you will not see is our early literacy pilot. Our brave teachers that took that on willingly. I'm very grateful that they were willing to take the time out of their instruction to try this and see if it worked. And we've gotten some pretty good feedback from them. So you will see if when we get the feedback from our first grade team, if it's something they want to stick with, then we will be putting it in the budget for them so that they will have an additional tool to measure early literacy with the principal. But having said that, you can see essentially grade 2 showed some nice progress, and more or less the rest of the grades are fairly flat, down 1, up 5, down 5, no change for 6th and 7th grade, 2-point increase for ELA in grade 8, and then the high school saw a dip of 7%. They started the year with 50% of their freshmen meeting or exceeding grade level expectations. They went to 43%. I will say that part of one of the reports that we have been looking at is actually there is a little column that will show you the amount of time the kids took on the exam. And so I know our principals and teachers did a great job of saying, that's strange. I know Johnny can do way better, and he took 3.5 minutes on this. So they had him go back, or her go back, to kind of recheck. The overall exam itself doesn't take usually more than about 30 minutes. It's not this 3-day, all day, shut the building down kind of thing. It's really not. It's not meant to be. And so this gives us a quick check of where we are. Now, what's interesting about this is this data is calibrated to MCAS 2.0. And if you remember our results from the fall, they're not exactly the same, but they're not far out of the ballpark either. And so it's always tricky when you're looking at calibrating tests like that. You look for those huge discrepancies in the data, and there are discrepancies up or down a few points, but they're not significant. But you can see from an English language arts perspective, it's really a reading exam. Essentially, the kids are flat, and we have about half of the kids at grade level. And I'll get into kind of what we're doing with all of this data in a minute once I go through all of it. Math, you'll see a little bit more of a consistent story from our beginning of year meeting and exceeding numbers to our middle of year meeting and exceeding numbers. Again, we're up or down a few points. And so none of this growth either way is significant. You're looking at a 10-point increase to make it a significant increase or decrease for that matter. So we're kind of hovering where we were. But I do want to also remind the committee, the beginning of year test, we started in mid-October. So we really had from mid-November, December, and then we started testing at the end of January. Because we had a little bit of a later start. If you remember, we kind of did that reset in the training with everybody. We had a little bit of a later start than we'll have next year. Next year we'll start right away, early September with that. And so it doesn't give the teachers a ton of time to delve into the reports, to rip them apart, to look at the standards and skills that the kids need, and to build some of those intervention groups, which they're doing feverishly now. That we've got a couple of data points. But again, math is essentially flat with and again, I'm estimating, but with around, as you can see, about half of our kids, or close to half at grade level. So slide 6 is the partially meeting or not meeting. We didn't put this all in one slide because it's just a ton of numbers. And so you'll see the yellow matches the yellow, so the beginning of year partially, the beginning of year not meeting, and then of course the pink matches the pink, which is the middle of year partially to the middle of year of not meeting. So if you go to the last 2 columns and you're looking at that not meeting, that is a really important number. And of course, we want to see that number getting smaller. And so places where we saw that number increase, of course, that was of significant concern to the principals and the teachers, of course, myself and our team. And again, I'll talk a little bit about how we're working with this data and what we're going to do with it, with some next steps. But you can see overall, 7% of the kids at grade 2 not meeting, and that's down from 12%. The grade 3 number is really worrisome to me because that's the grade level we know you have got to be on level, or closing that literacy gap is going to get harder and harder. 8 is too late, as we say. Kids need to be reading on grade level by 8. And unfortunately, we doubled the number of kids not meeting grade level expectations. You can see grade 4 was essentially flat, 5 was flat, 6 went up from 3% to 7, 7 was up by 2 points, grade 8 went up by 2 percentage points, and grade 9 went down. The interesting thing with the freshmen is you saw a little bit of a movement on kind of both ends. The warning or the not meeting rate went down a little bit. The meeting and exceeding rate went down, and they kind of went into that partially meeting. You can see the partially meeting category is up by 9%. So we've got to delve into that as Mr. Dudek and his team are doing now, to find out who are those kids, what are the standards and skills, and what happened. And the data is that specific, by the way. You can run it by grade, by class, by kid. And you can get an instructional report that will tell you student A needs work on these standards in this sequence, and here's how they did overall with each one of those standards and skills. So it's very specific. Again, with math, the interesting piece about our math data is you will notice the not meeting expectations is higher than the not meeting expectations in literacy, the overall numbers. So look at second grade. You can see grade 2 overall, 18% of kids not meeting expectations. Grade 3, again, we went from 4 to 12%. That's concerning. Grade 4 went from 13 to 16. Grade 5 was flat again. Grade 6, virtually the same. Grade 7, virtually the same. Grade 8, virtually the same. Grade 9, virtually the same, up a couple points. 1 or 2 points is not significant, but we want to see that number come down. And so again, you can see a lot of work being done. I'm just going to toggle back to the ELA slide because you notice, I mean, you can see it very quickly. The number of kids not meeting the literacy standards or literacy benchmarks is much lower than those in mathematics, particularly in our younger grades. So we've got a lot of work to do in that area.
So based on our MCAS data, principals had to identify that lower 10%?
25%.
25%?
Yep.
Did we look specifically if that, or were they all the not meeting folks and?
I'm smiling because we have really smart principals that actually took their data. I know because I looked at it with them.
Right, right.
They took their data and they put all of their star scores in there by kid, by class. Then they added a column that took their Fountas and Pinnell, their F&P scores for the lower grades. They put that data in, and they flagged if the student was in the bottom 25% and put their scores. So you have, by class, a really clear snapshot of where everybody is, and then they have the data behind it to say, here are the standards and skills for the specific kids. Where we are now is really working collaboratively to say, well, what do we do with this? So we have this information. I have these 25 students. I have these 6 kids I have to move in math, and I have these 8 I have to move in literacy while I'm moving through the grade level curriculum. And so how do I reorganize my class time, my instruction, to really target those particular skills when it's just me in the classroom in most cases? And how do I use a more kind of differentiated approach to put these 4 kids together on, measurement, these 3 kids together on algebraic expressions, these 4 kids together on, number sense, that kind of thing. And so that's where we are in terms of trying to pull that together. But as you can imagine, as you're unpacking this, you're also thinking about, okay, all of this is really important, but tomorrow I still have to teach inferencing. Like, I'm still focused on that. And that may not be a skill that all the kids need, so then how do I shift that?
Thank you.
And so the teachers and principals are doing a lot of work. And what will be really powerful with the instructional, the planning, teaching, and learning coaches, they can work side by side with small groups of teachers to do this together, to really help them accelerate this. And principals can be working with other groups of teachers to doing the same level of work. So this was something, and I want to just pause here for a second because I really appreciated some of the feedback. Well, I appreciate all the feedback from the committee on things they were curious about or things they wanted updates on in addition to the goals and the feedback that, kind of helped get this all framed out in addition to the actual goals and the data we have. But one of the things you'll notice, I don't have a mixed grade levels goal specifically, but I know that this is a really important piece of work to our district. I know the committee and those, I'm sure, families at home are really interested, like, how are those classrooms moving anyways? So what we did was we extracted each kid out of there and hand calculated each class to get a snapshot to see how the kids are doing in the mixed grades. And so you'll see these are just the kids in those mixed grade classrooms. So the 2-3 and the 2-3-4 classes. So you will notice the second graders in ELA in the mixed classroom went from 55% meeting and exceeding expectations to 73%. Our second grades have some of the highest growth in achievement out of all of the grades. The 3-4 classrooms, all the third graders in the 3-4 classrooms, that is a significant drop. Going from 69% to 57%. And of course, the fourth grade, of which I believe there are 17, 18 students, we were at 28% and we went to 6%. So it's interesting because this, and again, it's, it's one piece of data, right? We don't hang our hat only on this. It's one piece of data. But this piece of data is showing an interesting trajectory in that it might be working better at the younger grades, at least from a literacy perspective, than perhaps the older grades. I don't want to read too much into that because it's just one data point. It's an important one, but it's one. Then go to the other end of the continuum and you look at the kids not meeting. So if you look at that MOI not meeting column at the end, in grade 2 is essentially flat. Grade 3, it went from 0 to 5%. In grade 4, it went from 29 to 24%. Now, the other way that we need to look at this is in your PowerPoint, and I'm actually going to be doing my February community update to all of our families and everybody with this data and talking everybody through it in a much simpler way. I hope I'll try to synthesize it better. But another important way to look at this is in your packet, you can pull it apart and look at the mixed grades for ELA and how they compare to all students in ELA. So you will notice, and I just want to call this example out, mixed grades ELA, middle of year, is at 57% in grade 3 of our kids meeting or exceeding expectations, as compared to all grade 3 students at 42%. I'm sorry, where is it? 50, is that 50? No, 48%, excuse me. So it's still higher. Even though we saw a decrease, it's still higher than the aggregate. It's higher than all of the kids together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you've got to kind of pull the packet apart if you want to do that side-by-side comparison.
It's not in grade 4.
No. No, not at all. Grade 4 is
Grade 4, something happened.
way off the mark.
Yep.
But you'll notice the mixed grade, second grade scores are actually stronger than the aggregate.
Yep.
So again, just another way to look at that when you're doing that analysis of, well, you know, how are they doing compared to their peers that are in like a straight third grade? Well, you got to pull it side by side to look at it.
Yep. Makes sense.
And then math, second grade again went from 64% to 73%. Beginning of year,
Zeros. What's
18% of the kids were not meeting. 0% of kids are not meeting in that grade 2.
Amazing.
And that's a big number of kids in that class. And those kids are doing well.
And from my perspective, I don't know anybody else in the school committee, but the second grade parents, the second grade mixed class, is where I've heard the most complaints.
So from a data, same, I've heard
Right?
that as well.
And
But
yet, from a learning perspective, growing.
And I want to go back to something you said, Jane, which really obviously resonated around the sense of expectations.
Right.
And so, you know, I wonder, you put those kids with, you know, a 2-3 split with higher performing kids, look at what it's doing for our second graders.
Yeah.
So, and to that end, look what's happening to our fourth grade data. So we've got another issue we have to look at, clearly. But I know that Ms. Schaefer and her team are deep, deep, deep into this. They've already looked at it in their PLCs, their professional learning community meetings.
And I know you did this by hand, so I'm not asking you to do it again, but I'd be curious, the third graders who are with the second graders versus the third graders who are with the fourth graders.
Yeah, I have that broken out.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I can send that. So
Not that
the
I'm asking you
2,
to
3.
do that again.
Nope, that's okay, I have it, and the 3, 4. The other kind of part to this story that's important to look at is the growth. So what we just looked at was achievement.
Right.
And so before we look at this, I think we should note that STAR is taken by school districts across the country. There are hundreds and hundreds of school districts that take this exam. So when we look at our MCAS data, we are compared to the state of Massachusetts, as well we should be. That's fine. But on STAR, we're actually compared to all kids that took it everywhere. So you could have a school district in California take it, our data's in with their data. And so I think that actually frames a stronger argument for us, to be frank, in terms of how our students are growing. So again, shout out to grade 2. And they're not only are they achieving, but they're growing in the 72nd percentile in ELA. That's huge. The average growth is 50. The range of expected growth is somewhere between 40 and 60. So, I mean, they're exceeding even, even beyond that range, which is significant. So a huge shout out to our second grade teachers. And I do want to mention, even at the complex, Mr. Tringali and I have spent, quite a bit of time just kind of walking through and visiting those classrooms. They also have upwards of 30 kids in a class. So our teachers are really bringing it and trying to meet the needs of the kids, in particular across grade 2. So big shout out for the work they're doing. But you'll notice across the board, even though we saw some decreases by a couple of points, our student growth percentile, with the exception of grade 7, is still at average or just above. So our kids are still growing. We're not seeing the proficiency levels increase to the degree which we want to, but we know why that is. Carol said it, I think, best at the budget workshop meeting, in that, yeah, that's great. We have this data, we have this information, but we're really wrestling with how to provide the intervention. We don't have those aligned resources, supports, and the additional help that we need to do some of that work. And so even without that, you'll notice the kids are still growing on average. Now, we know average is not good enough for us in BMR. We know that. And we know that our kids have to grow stronger and higher than that to start to close some of those achievement gaps that we have. I mean, we know that. But at least they're growing at the expected rate. And then we look at math. You can see the growth rates are a little bit higher. Yeah. So again, we had higher numbers of kids not meeting expectations, but you can also see that we have higher growth rates here. And so again, this speaks to, and just so everybody understands, like if you look at 5th grade, being in the 66th percentile means that our 5th grade students are outperforming or outgrowing 66% of kids that had the same score as them in the fall. So if you had, you had 100 kids that scored 500 in grade 5 on the fall exam, our kids grew more than 66 of those. So there is some good, there's a good story to this too, in addition to the work we have to get done.
Would you have expected to see 4th grade lower compared to the other data that was pulled out? Because in here, they don't look a little bit off.
And I think the reason for that, if you look at the, I'm just going to toggle back to the mixed grade math. If you look at grade 4 here, the number of, so we have a small number. We have 18 kids in that group. And so that's it. And so with that number being as small as it is, it has a less of an impact on the overall number. Yep. So I wasn't sure. I think, and that's a great question, Aaron. I wasn't really sure what to expect with that at first. I didn't know what the growth was going to look like with that. But when you start to look back at the numbers and that n size is small, I think it speaks to why the growth was still average.
And the growth number includes 4th grade from the complex as well as Millville.
Yep.
As well as the mixed and the unmixed.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
Yep. It's everybody together. And again, when you mix it all together, I think it brings that growth rate comes up because there's more kids, or it's a bigger n size, and more kids in the mix. So slide 12 and 13 is something we're going to be talking about a little bit later in terms of some so what, now what, and it also is referenced in the entry plan findings in terms of the MCAS 2.0 data. This is where I think the most work, in addition to the core curriculum development and the core instructional framework focus that we have, we really need to get into this. These are our students with special needs extracted from the data. And again, we hand calculated these kids, we triple checked these numbers, and we looked at the growth from beginning to middle of year for meeting and exceeding, beginning to middle of year for partially meeting, and beginning to middle of year for not meeting. And again, the way to look at this data, as painful as it is to see, but it's important, you need to pull the data apart and put it side by side. So you look at the aggregate of all kids in ELA from fall to winter compared to just the students with special needs for ELA. And that's where Jane, to your question earlier, again, I don't keep coming back to it, but that's where we see the biggest gap.
Gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's any surprise to folks that we have a significant amount of work that needs to be done within the special education department from a structural perspective, from an instructional model perspective, a programming perspective, and service deliveries. And our special teachers are working hard. That isn't the issue. It's, we need to take a deeper look at the actual services we're providing and the level of instruction and the accommodations through all of that, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the kids. And it's evident by this that we're not. I think that's clear. So a lot to do here, and I will tell you, our interim special ed director has already scheduled meetings with our principals to pull these numbers apart and meet with the special education teacher and team chairs to have the conversation of, what are we doing about this, folks? We have got to double down on our approach and figure out how we're going to address the, and I'll be frank, I actually don't care about the numbers. I care about the story behind the numbers. Behind the numbers are a significant number of concept skills and strategies that the kids don't have. If they had them, we wouldn't have results like this. And I don't want to hear, and I'm not saying it to the committee, but in general, well, they're special ed kids. Well, I don't care. Those kids are going to exit our school district and be in the same workforce as everybody else. And so they need to be prepared in order to do that. And so my intensity with this topic comes up a little bit because that doesn't mean anything to me. These children need to be ready to compete for higher education, career readiness work, just like everybody else. So we have a lot of work to do here. That's our ELA overview, and then our math is an even bleaker picture. Grades 2, 3, and 4, we have over half of our kids. Grade 7, over half of our kids are not meeting expectations. And none of this is finger pointing, it's just our reality, and we've got to address it. And so we're going to do that. Again, look at grade 3. We went from 18% not meeting to 56%.
I just circled that.
It's 8. Yeah.
So,
And again, before everybody sends up their alarm, although these students are important, this number could be 4 students. Like, we don't know the number of kids per grade. So while we're gonna plug away, 56% might be
so the
3
range,
kids.
just so the committee is aware, because we had
Not sure what
to
the
count
breakdown
one.
is.
Right.
So the range is between 18 to about 28.
for the grade,
Yes.
the
Yep.
number of students in this slide.
So some it was
it's a class,
22,
and
some
so,
it's a
I mean,
class.
so it's a class. It's a class, and I mean, part of me when I first looked at it was like I wondered if there was, transition issues going from one school to the next school, but it's all over. It's everything, and it's not 8 to 9. It's clearly 5 to 6, but it's not 8 to 9. It's I don't know.
But I'm glad you asked that question, Tammy. I think that's an important one to note. It's not, we have 324 total students with special needs in our district. But when you look, grade 3, I think, is 18,
Okay.
right? So again, when you have a small number or a small n, you move 3 or 4 kids, and that shows a huge percentage, right? But at the end of the day, and I know the committee knows this, but these are lives. These are real.
Well, and not
These are
moving
kids.
these numbers don't move the other numbers that came prior.
That's right. Because these numbers are embedded in.
Are
there.
there? You're right.
Yep.
They're counted twice, if you will, and that's okay. But it's just they're there, so you have to move all, or you don't move.
That's right.
And I think that the fact that the numbers are kind of all over the place, like you can't find, oh, well, this is where they went up to the middle school.
Right.
Or they're just all over.
They're all over.
Speaks to the fact that we need alignment vertically and horizontally in order to see progress across all levels. I mean, if you're going from one grade where it's taught this way, or you have this number of interventions, and then in the next grade they're completely different, that's what you get. So it speaks to the need for restructuring, in my opinion.
Good point.
And so that was the end of the student achievement goal. And then the rest, I'll just, kind of breeze through and just kind of touch on some quick highlights. The professional practice goal, the way we framed out this is each goal is listed, and then the actual evidence behind the goal, and the committee has these evidence samples in their evidence packets or binders that were put together. And so I don't know, Jane, if it makes sense to kind of pause and see if there are questions on each one, or just kind of go right to the end and see what folks have for.
Yeah, I've kind of been asking people if they had questions as we went along, but does anybody have any end for the yeah, we'll just do them as we go along.
Just kind of go as, okay.
Yeah.
So for the professional practice goal, and this is really, the goal was built around strategy development, instructional leadership, and really doing a lot of capacity building across the district, developing that strong partnership with the school committee, participating in the new superintendent induction program. And so for evidence for that goal, your packet had some samples of the work that we're doing with focus schools, because that really is some of the structural systems and structure work that we're putting in place to really work in that capacity building. I am just so excited to share that the teachers, we're at the point now where we're folding the teachers in. So, we needed to do some foundational work. I shared with the committee that we're doing some cross-district work with Hudson Public Schools and Hamden-Wilbraham, out more in Western Mass. And so, these are small districts that are smaller like us can feel very isolating. And so we're pulling together to do some of that cross-district work. And so samples that you have in your packet are some of the work we're doing around the capacity building in that area. The work that we are doing, my work that I'm doing side by side with the principals. The principals are kind of the driving lever of change in our schools, and doing some really great work. And so I just put some samples of my communication with them. We refer to as a Charger Weekly, which is our instructional newsletter that goes out on Sunday morning. I don't make them read it on Sunday morning, but that's when I send it out. That's when I send it out. The entry plan findings report, and the other part that I'm also in the process of surveying our leadership team on feedback for me, and so that will be done. Right now, I got a feedback today. We're about 80% there with respondents, so we're still waiting for a few more. So don't have that ready yet.
Okay. Anything there? Nope. Go.
Okay. The teaching and learning work. And so again, here is the goal. By the end of the year, 100% of our students will show evidence of improving instruction and student, 100% of our schools will show evidence of improving instruction and student learning through implementing the Focus Schools framework, specifically in the following areas, and I bulleted that. And again, now we're at the level where we are really starting to build out this work with our teachers, which we're really excited about. And so in the evidence packet provided to you there, we went through some of the STAR protocols we're using to look at the data, standing school visit meetings with principals and some of the focus areas of that work, the work we're doing now to build our instructional leadership teams in our schools, professional development, the 2 full days that we had, provided to you the focus areas and the goals for each one of those, feedback from the teachers, the good, the bad, and the ugly from them, which I really appreciated from the October 5th PD. A writing survey that we sent out to teachers, asking them before we proceed with where we are, give us some feedback on, on what you need and where you want to focus in terms of the program itself. I also included the Johns Hopkins survey. I think that was really important because they, as you know, are collecting a lot of information for us on the curriculum side. They are compiling that, and they will be in our district the week after February break, visiting classrooms and looking at the level of learning the kids are doing, and seeing some of that curriculum in action. And I have asked their lead researcher to, I believe it was Brennan, I think, Dr. Brennan, to come to a committee meeting in the spring and share the findings. And so she was really excited to do that. She also had a chance to meet with our leadership team, which I thought was pretty cool, that she could sit down and really kind of process with them. She loved the conversation and felt that we were really on the mark. And then, of course, our science curriculum work. And I know I got some feedback from the committee about saying, well, where are we? The science curriculum committee will be in front of the committee in March to give a full update of where we are on that work itself.
Any, that was one of our things, so anybody have questions or what they hope to see in March, or? But the goal of that committee is to have a curriculum, it's not a testing of it, it's to have one in place come fall.
Yes. To have it in place, and also we'll have recommendations to the committee for,
Whatever.
for purchasing of. And this is an awesome teacher leadership opportunity because, and Steve and Christina are leading the work with them, but the teachers are building these units. And so they're going to start training each other on the units. And if you remember, we're working with Teachers 21. Katie Clark is the lead on the science work for them. So we're working with them to help facilitate the units of instruction. And so we will be piloting different resources and different units. And we're looking at May. But it's hard work. I mean, you know, it's a new process. It's a new model. Our teachers are going to have to learn the content, you know, thinking about doing a unit on waves. You know, if you've never taught a unit on waves, it's fairly complex. And so you've got to learn the material, and then you've got to be able to implement the materials for the pilot. And so there's a lot of work. I give a big shout out to our teachers that are leading that.
Unless you have an oscilloscope.
And then Matt can help with, as a former biology teacher, Matt, is that chemistry? Biology?
Biology, chemistry.
And just what?
Why are you not on the science committee?
He's busy.
I'm busy.
What can we expect with the Johns Hopkins study or the survey? Like, what's it going to look like?
So I've never seen their final product, but what they are going to do, the teachers have already surveyed. So you saw the survey. The
Yeah.
teachers took
It's in
that.
here.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. I called them because we had a couple of teachers that, I don't know, something was wrong with the computer. They couldn't log in or something. And I had shot him an email and said, hey, you know, we had some people miss it. And he wrote back and kind of laughed and said, we have plenty of information. So I think what they're doing now is compiling it. Mm-hmm. And they're really looking at the, you know, the resources that the teachers are using. So I think that's one bucket. Mm-hmm. The next bucket is going to be the instructional practices being used to implement the curriculum. And then they're going to do something called a learning map. And so that is going to be specifically geared toward the K-5, where we're going to be looking at literacy specifically at the level of, you know, maybe rigor is the right word, or challenge that we're asking our kids to apply their learning to through reading and writing. So we're going to kind of get these three different buckets of information. You know, one is just, you know, here's kind of a list of all the stuff people are using at different grade levels to help us kind of unpack, you know, like, well, what do we have? What should we keep with that? Because the teachers are using some good stuff. Mm-hmm. And what are some things we should do different? Here are some of the instructional, you know, design practices, instructional practices teachers are using to implement some of that material. And then here's the level of learning that kids are being asked to do. So if you think about it, it's kind of the curriculum, the teaching, the learning. And it's all, you know, just anonymous aggregate information. So it's,
Thank you.
sure, safe way to kind of pull it apart.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay.
Fiscal management. You know, we had three main goals here. I think the first piece of this, to just summarize, was to really get our fiscal house in order. Not to say that it wasn't in order, but to look at how we're monitoring each dollar that we're spending. The second was really developing a budget on an agreed-upon timeline, and the third was making sure that we have alignment between the districts, the towns, and using, you know, a process that will get everybody on the same page. And so again, for evidence, the monthly fiscal reports, personnel reports, the reorganizations, which we'll talk about in a minute, the timeline, and, you know, the FY20 material and staff. A lot of this is very fresh for us now. Our budget priority forecast that we did in December, we didn't have numbers on it, but we knew a sense of the needs that we were going to have based on the cost center manager meetings, the work with the towns, and then some of the additional resources through grants. One of the things the committee asked me during the interview process, actually multiple times, was, how are we going to address some of these fiscal issues? What are some other ways of bringing in resources? I remember distinctly in that room saying very clearly, one of the first things we need to do is look at how we're spending every existing dog. Carol, you were there. And we talked about this idea of how are we spending the money we have? Does it align with the direction we're trying to go? And so you'll see in a minute, we have already reorganized significantly quite a few departments to not ask for new money, but to use better the money that we have. And with that, we have also pursued additional funding opportunities. So the Johns Hopkins work was approved, wrote a grant that was approved for $51,000. We've written another grant to expand the work with focus schools and our instructional leadership teams for $30,000. We just had a call on that yesterday. And working with a local bank to try to fund a literacy project at the tune of $25,000. So we're still waiting to hear for that. So we're hustling. We're getting out there looking for other funding streams in addition to figuring out how do we repurpose this dollar so it aligns better with what we need to do.
Just off the top of your head, the total of those grants, if they're all...
100 and, was it 50, 30, 25, so 105?
Thank you.
Yep, 106. Which isn't a ton, but it's a start,
More than we have right now?
More than we had last year.
Are there any other questions on the fiscal? And then the last, of course, the community outreach, which is really bringing not only just bringing the communities together, but we really need to get direct feedback from our families. We're going to be putting together a survey that we will send out in the spring to families. And we'll be looking for various things. My hope is to send the survey after the blueprint that we develop, because and after we have an opportunity to really work with our community around that, because it's important that the community understands the direction in which we're moving. I think that that's huge. And so there'll be a lot of questions on there to assess that level of work. And so, we're starting this work. That's a big piece to kind of take on. But, the community updates, again, you can see the hits yourself when you look at if you go to the little Vimeo link and that we send it every month, you can see how many people saw it and viewed it that month. The family and caregiver meetings, not huge attendance at those, between 10 and 15. The District of 1 events have actually been fairly well attended. We had 100 at the first walk. We had 200 at the dinner. Thankful for being a District of 1 dinner. And we are going to be having an event coming up in March that we'll be advertising that is framed around, so what, now what? Where do we want our schools to go, BMR? And it's going to be a roundtable dinner discussion.
Maybe food is key.
People come for food.
They come for food.
So we're going to try to see if we can get some
have
folks
snacks
up for
at the family and caregiver meeting. You never know.
So just a little bit of an over. And again, I want to be clear. I know that kitschy, cute community things that's not the work.
Yeah, no, right,
But it starts
it's
there.
the connection.
Right, it's the relationship building. And then there's a lot of stuff we didn't put in here in terms of meeting with town administrators, FinComs, all of that. But that's how the work gets momentum. And that is the end of my mid-year evaluation.
Have any questions or comments for being able to fill out your forms?
So, could you just clarify I made a note on it.
I know.
Did you make that binder, or was that specially prepared?
No,
for
I
you?
made it. And I put
I will
color.
put everything in
I was a little
binders.
jealous looking over
I
there.
put colored pages so I know
Even
when
if
to
it was
flip to
made
the next
first, just
section.
telling
The
you no.
professional practice goal,
Yeah.
so can you just tell us?
Can I, which is which, or what is what? So I took it from Wendy's sheet that she gave us, and it doesn't match necessarily what this is here.
But it does belong on here.
But it does belong on
Okay,
there.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, And I know you're going to go into this.
So that's the, so
Okay.
that's this.
This is missing
And it-
from here, but we are still going to add that to,
Yes.
okay,
It may be in here
It's
called
not.
something else.
it's not.
In all these, it's
No,
not?
these are, because these,
Oh,
all of
okay.
these goals match everything except for this
Except for
one.
that one. Okay, I'm
So
missing
it's
one. then.
just missing.
So just make note, call it number
We could-
11.
We could put it
and
on
make
the,
notes.
under comment,
Yeah,
under
you can.
comments. So there is a number 11. All
Yeah.
right. I just want to make sure we were
Yeah,
including,
and I may have just missed it from our packet from our first meeting,
Okay.
which is possible because I was trying to hit and miss.
so are we creating, are you creating a Survey Monkey from this?
Not for
or are
this,
we-
not for this phase, for the end of the year
Okay.
phase. So this one is just, number one, on target, off target, not started. Here's a few of my comments.
And
Number
how
two, number
are
three,
we,
number
how
four.
are we
You can
compiling?
just email them to me,
Okay.
and I will
That's-
compile them.
Like the one I sent, right?
Yes,
That's fine.
but tied to this
But on this, okay.
checklist,
Do we
I
have
tried to
this-
follow the,
the thing.
yeah.
Yeah, can you email
Is
us?
this
so we can
electronic?
compile?
That would be fabulous.
I feel like Wendy
Or I'll
sent it
just
to me.
scan it. Give you a
Yes, I can make that
Wendy-
happen.
Wendy might have sent it to us when,
Well,
at that.
so it's a hybrid of, it follows
So you
the
did
state
something
thing, and
different.
it's a hybrid of what she sent us, so. It's the words she sent us on the form that the state had in there.
I personally love typing comments versus
So if
writing
this was in
them.
a Google Doc, we could all,
No, we can't do that.
Well, we
no,
can't
no,
share.
each our
Oh,
own.
each your own, yes.
If we just
you could.
have
Make a
one,
copy
then we could give it back to you.
Yeah.
and then share it back
It's
to
a
you,
Word
and you're
document
going to
now,
put it
but I
all
can make it
together.
a Google if you prefer Google. Yeah, I can do that. I'll do that tomorrow.
Word's fine too, either way.
Yeah, either one.
Okay.
Will do. Coming your way.
And if I can just add one other piece that, I know this is my evaluation, and I have the pleasure of having that done in public, but I want to,
It is
I
just
want to
as uncomfortable
underscore.
for us as it is for you,
No,
just so
it's
you know.
okay. This is the work. You either like it or you don't. No, I'm kidding, but this is actually the work of our team. So to me, I really appreciate the principals a lot, and I appreciate the central office leadership folks, because this is the work that, it's all of us pulling. The teacher leadership, the work with the union around all of this, and the many, many conversations we've had about this. Even recently meeting with the executive board, which I really appreciated coming together to just talk about how things are going. So it's not, yes, it's my, work per se and evaluation, but it's really the work of our team. So I just wanted to mention,
Yeah.
I'm very appreciative of them.
And, yeah, all of them. That includes the one sitting to your left as well.
He's okay.
And
I try.
he complains, though, about seeing a graph too many times. We'll have to work on that. Any other comments?
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to say I appreciate all of this information because it's, you always know when you get that community update, it's compiled for myself, but to see it all in front of us, all the work that has already been done, it's heavy.
Been a fun 7 months.
Just imagine what's coming next.
Buckle in.
Buckle up, buttercup.
So,
Okay.
shifting to the special ed reorganization, before I jump into that, I just want to touch on this very quickly. You will notice up on the screen there is a little table that is referred to as a realignment of dollars, school year 2018-19. I wanted to put this piece up here right up front because I do want to just review with folks that all of the reorganization work we have, I don't have a handout,
You
it's
don't
just
have
a
it,
simple.
it's just a note.
Yeah, and it's all things that the committee knows, but I did want to just review it again, even with the public, so they understand this as well. And so you'll see two major reorganizations that we have done already. The first being in central office, going back into the summer, where we took the business manager position and we reorganized it into an assistant superintendent. We do not have a business manager and a assistant superintendent. Matt is wearing both hats. So that was not new money. That was realigned dollars from the business manager position. When we went through the last reorganization in January, We reduced, we actually eliminated an administrative assistant position. We eliminated a consultant from the central office, and we realigned those dollars into an instructional coach. And so we pushed that money right out to the schools. That's not new money. And our financial assistant we reorganized into a human resource specialist. It's not new money. I made a commitment to the communities to look at every single dollar we have, and we're doing that. And so I think it's important to note. Again, with the complex, the reorganization structure there, the left is what we have, the right is what we will have moving forward. Again, the addition of the instructional coach is not new money. That is existing dollars. And so before we get into tonight's work around the special education reorganization, you're going to see a similar pattern in that this administration has not asked for new money for new positions. We have simply reorganized the amount of full-time people we have and restructured money and eliminated positions to put the positions in place that we need for the time where we are now. And so I just wanted to open with that.
Well, and I appreciate that, because you and I have had that conversation many times, and I have had meetings with FinCom members, and we've had the towns here, and they are asking us, what are we doing to use what we have and realign what we have, and it's really a pleasure to say, watch the meetings, because we are doing that. We have been doing that. We continue to do that, and it's important to do that. I think not just in these 3 areas, but in every area. You know, what is it that we have that doesn't work to serve the purpose that it was intended, or no longer is intended, and how do we find new ways to use those resources to better serve, to address the goals.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jane, and I think to that end, you know, the organizational structure we have now, 3, 4, 5 years out, I don't think we'll have that. I really don't. I mean, if we continue to stay fresh, keep evolving, keep growing, keep moving, we're not going to have the same, we shouldn't. We should be changing and growing and evolving. And so, you know, but it doesn't mean adding. It means repurposing what we have to the best of our ability. So before you now is the proposed reorganization for the special education department. And so this reorganization looks a little bit different. And so in your packets, before I delve into this, you will see the reorganization overview, and you will see the Director of Learner Support Services, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the Assistant Administrator for Special Education Services, which we'll talk about in a moment as well. But before we do, I want to look at the overall structure of the special education department. We just saw some very compelling student data that shows we are not hitting the mark on our service delivery for kids. And so what we are looking at now is a proposed reorganization that does not change the total number of full-time employees within the special ed structure. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you look at our current design, so if you look all the way to the left and you see the current school year 18-19 design, we have an interim special education, an interim director of special education, and we have 4 team chairs at the tune of $367,501. If you look to the middle column, if we kept this structure, which I'm going to would challenge anybody to say it's working based on the performance we just saw and the performance that's in our report of findings document, this structure that we have in place now at next year's costs would be somewhere between $395,000, $278,000 to $400,278. So you can see that just leaving the structure the way it is, we would see an increase based on steps and lanes and all of that with the contract, and having one director of special education. Now, if you go to the proposed structure all the way to the right, you will see a little bit of a different model. You will see a Director of Learner Support Services. You will see an Assistant Administrator for Special Education, and you will see 3 team chairs aligned very different. And so, as you know, and Sarah said it a couple times about that alignment work across across the schools and the grade levels. As a matter of fact, you were referring specifically to special ed when you looked at that data and said there's really no pattern here. Right. And so I think you are 100% accurate on that. And so what we're looking to do is reorganize the team chairs across schools, but having them focus on particular grade spans. You know, developing an education plan for a pre-K through 5th grader and everything in between is very different in terms of the type of supports and goals, types of goals that are written and supports that are needed. And so what we're looking to do is bring that specialty or expertise in to very specific grade spans. So we're looking to reorganize the team chairs to have a pre-K to 2 that would do all of our early intervention work and all the way through 2nd grade across the 2 buildings. We can't be a district of 1 and continue to have these separate kind of siloed pieces of work. We're then looking at a grades 3 through 6 so we can align the upper elementary across the 2 schools, but then give our kids that bridge into the middle school. That part is really important so that when they are here in 6th grade, they have that kind of gatekeeper, that person that knows them, that's been working with them and their family and their teachers over the past, prior couple of years. And then looking to align very, very tightly. And we saw the upper grades middle school and the high school data, at least 7, 8, and 9, the secondary planning and intervention and support services that will be required for those kids. So I want to explain a little bit about why we would convert. So again, we have 5 staff in this department. Why we would convert 1 of those team chair positions to an assistant admin for special ed. So in order to do that, I need to talk about both positions. The Director of Learner Support Services, the way that I want folks to really think about and understand this, the Superintendent Office and the Office of Teaching and Learning is the core work. That's the work we're doing with principals, the work we're doing with teachers, that's the curriculum development work, that's all the stuff we already saw, all the instructional framework development, the instructional leadership teams, all of that core work. That's happening in those places. What we are not doing well, and we've heard this repeatedly from different folks, and we've seen it in numbers, is getting the and more right, that Tier 2, Tier 3 intervention. And so what we are looking to do is create a Director of Learner Support Services that will oversee all of that intervention work. So that will look at special education, ELL, all of our Title I, Title II, Title IV, and RTI work, and all of the social, emotional, behavioral development tiered intervention work that needs to happen. And so right now, we have an interim director of special education. The interim director is doing a wonderful job, but is really just kind of looking at the special ed and a little bit of the ELL, and that's it. So we are all owning as much of those other pieces as we can, but we need to streamline that work to get that vertical piece all the way through the grade levels.
So as an example, when the principal of the high school talked to us about these students who are out for mental health issues or even concussions, and kind of come back after lengthy time away or whatever, there's really no program focusing service to those folks right now.
It's
correct?
school to school.
Okay.
So it's school to school, and it's based on the services that school can provide and the focus that that school has on those particular students with those particular issues.
And the goal would be to have somebody this position that can at least have a handle on.
That's right.
Those issues across the district. And also this whole because I don't believe that we do RTI. I believe we do lots of enrichment.
We have on paper response to intervention blocks, right? And in conversations with our staff very recently, they were really candid, and so were the principals that we need to do. We can do more and better with that time.
Right.
But we do not, if you were to ask, do we have a response to intervention model that we are using to intervene and actually prevent kids from going into special education, I would say very clearly no. I think buildings are all trying their best, but they're all kind of doing something a little different, and it's not from a lack of effort.
Right. No, agreed.
But we need a streamlined process that even prevents, special ed is not a destination.
Right.
It's not somewhere you should end up and stay. And so there should be these interventions along the way to see if we can provide what we need to without labeling, quote unquote, a child, or without having to provide that level of service. So, please.
So if you don't mind, if I just kind of, so currently a student is out on medical leave, like a social emotional medical leave, or even a true medical leave. They come back, their school counselor works with their teachers and the principal to formulate a plan for that individual student. So one of the, I've questioned this piece a little bit. I find it very hard to believe that someone that's sitting in central office is going to be able to make finite decisions about the kid that's coming into any one of these schools with this level of need better than what the internal school counselor will do, who probably knew them before they went out, during when they were out, and when they came back.
So and I'm glad you said that, and I want to clarify something you said. So that's the difference between this administration and others. Central office administrators don't sit in central office. So they won't do that work. As a matter of fact, it's hard to find one of the very few of us actually in central office. We're usually out in one of the schools. We're meeting with the principals, the assistant principals, the team chairs, the guidance counselors. We are in the work. And I cannot underscore that enough. If you're going to be part of my team, you're doing the work. You're not sitting up on the balcony telling everybody what to do and just judging them from afar. You are in the work trying to problem solve and getting to know the students, the challenges, the issues. So I would challenge that a little bit, just only to say this individual will be working side by side with those counselors and principals to make sure we have the right services for kids.
And I guess, Tammy, where I was going with that is to make sure there's a developed protocol. Because like, one counselor may say, it's okay, we'll get there, and another counselor may say, hey, we got to do this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and a counselor at a different school might, and so there's just not been any general kind of oversight of making sure we're following the protocol, making sure we're up to date on policies and procedures and processes, and I think it's a fall through the crack. We have a lot of fall through the crack. Issues.
Working in two schools, I don't think, I guess that's my point. I think this particular subset of kids, I don't think there's going to ever be a protocol of boxes that you build that meet the needs of each and every kid, because they are, what works in an elementary school is definitely going to be very different model at the high school for this type of kid. And so that's part of my concern with the thought that this central office person is going to be able to navigate this better than a principal with a guidance counselor.
We have no model now. So you might be thinking of a particular school that maybe they've executed well on that, but I can probably put a couple schools out there that's not executing well on it, because we have no, I think, Jane, the point you were making, but no structure, protocol, process.
And I don't mean here's the checklist A, B, C for the high school kid who gets a concussion versus the elementary kid who, breaks a leg and out for a week. Sure. I don't mean that, but I mean, kind of a general, the person or people or group of people who make themselves to be kind of the experts in these areas. I mean, I agree. Everybody is working very hard to have some kind of intervention for every student they see in their classroom, and everybody's doing a very different, approach to that. As I imagine, every guidance counselor is doing a very different approach to. I mean, they do know the kids. They know the Johnny versus the Jane versus the whatever, Lucille, whoever we've got in there. But at the same time, I think that that there's some best practices out there. I think that there are some, Mike came to us with programs that other schools are doing, and we just don't have even a person looking at what's even out there. You kind of hit it, we react as versus planning.
And by the way, that consumed a day and a half of Mike's time. And I say this very respectfully, I don't want Mike caught up in that. That was a day and a half of teacher meetings he wasn't able to do, PLCs he couldn't attend, classroom observations he couldn't. He's the instructional leader of that building. And so for those 2 days, he's investigating social emotional type, which is okay, but at the end of the day, he's also trying to run his building, right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, not that it should never be siloed like that,
No.
but when you're looking at trying to create this coherent and consistent model, Mike looked at that because Mike wanted to look at that, and he should be able to do that. But I would argue that need is consistent throughout, And so if we're going to look at a model, let's look at a model, district-wide with that. And so I guess what I'm saying, this, again, the Director of Learner Support Services, for anybody watching this or will watch this, that is our current Director of Special Education. That is not a new ask of $105,000 to $110,000. That is not new money. That is a realignment of existing dollars. And so with that, because the scope of responsibility is so significant under that one position, we are looking for an assistant administrator that will just focus on special ed, that will be able to really support the team chairs, that will be able to support the overhaul, if you will, and the redesign of the special education department that we've talked about, and really assist the director in doing that level of work. And so if you look at the bottom of this third column, you will see that to do the model outlined above with the Director of Learner Support Services, the Assistant Administrator of Special Ed, and the 3 team chairs, the total is somewhere between $407,518 and $417,581. That would come at an increase over next year's already calculated costs of $7,500 to $17,500, depending upon where the 2 positions would come in at. But again, essentially what we've done is we've eliminated a team chair position and we've reorganized it into a non-union 12-month position to just assist the Director of Learner Support Services in special education at the tune of basically an increase of $7,500 to $17,000.
So that number is a little different than, did you add ESY in there?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I know I during our one-on-one, I had asked for that, so.
Yeah, and so there was a ESY stipend that went to
Essentially anyone that applied to it.
an employee, sorry, yeah. So an
Someone new
employee,
would apply.
yeah, to pick up the summer program, and what we did was we built into the assistant admin that role and responsibility, so we were able to add back that $9,500 back to the budget. So the cost of this is even less.
Or essentially towards this salary.
Right. Yeah, whichever way you want to.
Right.
And so behind that are the 2 job descriptions. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So you'll find behind that the Director of Learner Support Services and the Assistant Administrator for Special Ed Services.
Could you just, so right now you have weekly admin meetings. Where does the assistant fall into that in your first outlook on this, on this being implemented? Are they both at your meeting? Is one doing the daily work and one at your meeting, or?
So our district leadership team right now is comprised of the 5 principals, the 2 assistant principals, the interim special ed director, our technology integration specialist, Matt, and myself. And so what we would do is we would include the assistant admin for special ed and the 2 instructional coaches.
And that's once a week?
No, every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't bother them that much. Yeah, it's every other week. Usually the meetings are about 2 hours.
Well, I can't comment.
We have a lot of work to do.
Clearly as do we. All right. Any other questions about the reorganization of special ed?
And you're looking to implement these positions as soon as possible so we can put out start the search, correct?
Yes, the first, we would post for the Director of Learner Support Services first. That individual will need a special educator license. We want somebody that has obviously a significant amount of experience in that field. But we're also looking for a diversified skill set with that. So we need to fill that position first. And I mention that only to say there are 6 searches right now around us for special ed directors. And so that is a incredibly challenging position to fill. Never mind when there are 6 competing searches that are,
Right around us.
yeah, and we are not in the ballpark of those salaries.
And so the special ed licensure will come first?
Yes.
And then if they have ELL, SEL, RTI
Experience and
background,
work.
that will just plump that person up?
Yeah, and I'll use an analogy, Matt. I'm sorry if it's like when we were looking for the assistant superintendent, we wanted a business manager and, right? So like we knew they had to have that facilities and finance, but we wanted an educator that could also help partner in the leadership and the teaching and learning work. So the fact that, we knew that pool would be smaller, which it was, but we knew we needed somebody who had been a teacher, a building administrator, had some central office experience. And of that, that boiled down to like 3 people out of everybody that applied. And so, we don't need 3 people, we just need that one right fit. So I see this kind of similar, that has that experience, but also the other scope.
But to be clear, both job descriptions also are listing the license as a qualification?
Yep.
Okay. But your goal is to hire this person first, and then
They will hire
their
their assistant. Yes.
But their start date
July 1.
July 1.
will not be till July, so we won't be posting and hiring?
No, what we'll do is, once we hire the new person, we will develop a transition plan and have that person, shadowing, working in the district, and then we will set up the process for that individual to partner with, with us on hiring that assistant.
On interviews and such? Okay.
Exactly, yep.
Any other questions?
On the proposed 1920 design,
Yes.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question because it deals with money.
You're allowed.
I'm allowed? If the interim director goes back to a chair position, does that change this number of the increase?
So,
I don't know how that,
Yeah.
I don't,
so let me answer that the best I can.
I know she's been here a very, very long time.
Yes. So it all depends on how the team chair positions shake out.
Okay.
So we have, for instance, we have some team chairs that, teach a couple of classes that would, that may prefer to go back in the classroom. So we may have a vacancy there.
Okay.
We have a team chair that is not full-time, that may not be able to do this.
Okay.
So I say that only to say we did the best estimate with the numbers based on the current salaries at next year's costs. So I don't know exactly until I know who of the team chairs will be able to return. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
So everything could
Yeah.
shift in a
I just don't know yet, until
Okay.
we know how that will shake out.
I mean, and just for the record, I like the team chair reorganization. I think
By
that
grade level,
totally
right.
makes sense on all aspects. So I just want to say that piece. I may not agree with the whole everything, but I definitely agree. I like that thinking of the alignment and all of that, but.
I just want to say that we asked for you to, dig in deep and find out where the help was needed and how we could fix it. And I definitely think this is a step in the right direction, all the way down to realigning the team chairs. The only other thing I'd like to see eventually, and even if it comes after the new Director of Learning Support Services is here, is a better job description for our team chairs.
A consistent one.
Consistent one that everyone, that doesn't have the date of 2006 on it, I guess. But that way everyone knows where they stand.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know right now we have 3, but only one is approved by the committee, so that's definitely an issue.
All right, so I am going to start, I think, do you all have motions in front of you? I'll entertain a motion to approve the job description for the Director of Learner Support Services as recommended by the superintendent.
So moved?
Moved by
Second.
Aaron.
Second.
You know what, do we?
Yes, we do.
No,
Oh.
we are not.
A quorum.
We are not a quorum.
Yeah, we're 5.
We're
For
fine.
how many from
3
each
and
town?
2.
Count you.
Don't
Oh,
forget
yeah, we're
yourself.
good. Phew! I didn't count myself. I'm like, wait a minute, we don't have enough people. Okay, we do. All right, so, moved by Aaron and seconded by
Sarah.
Sa-
Sorry.
Sarah.
Which is-
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the Director of Learner Support Services as recommended by the superintendent, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Is that what I
And
say?
yeah, that's what you
I
say.
never said no.
And abstentions? Okay, so approved. I will entertain a motion to approve the restructuring of the administrative services provided at the special education office by eliminating 1 team chair and aligning those dollars by adding an assistant administrator for special education services, which will report to the Director of Learning Support Services. The planned administrative reorganization recommended by the superintendent to be effective July 1st, 2019, subject to impact bargaining obligations with affected employees, bargaining representatives, and further approval of the creation of new positions, consolidating duties and responsibilities, all as recommended by the superintendent. Each new position to be posted as required by applicable contracts or committee policy.
So moved.
Moved by Jack, seconded by Aaron. Is there any discussion there?
I've had my discussion. I mean,
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
nay.
And abstentions. Okay, so moved. And finally, number 3, the committee hereby approves the job description for the Assistant Administrator of Special Ed recommended by the superintendent.
So
So-
moved.
Moved by Jack,
Second.
second by Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions. Okay. And the Director of Learner Support Services will involve the school committee in the search and come to us for approval, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Great. And then my last item, it was just a very quick update Matt is going to do on the state budget.
Sure, I just wanted to mention, I had attended a training session on the Chapter 70 allocation, and essentially, the conversations are that it's going to be a long and strange process this year due to the fact that the foundation budget is changing with each of the different iterations of the proposals. So we've been told that right now the governor's budget is the best estimate of where we should put our starting figures, which is what it is that we have done. But the Senate, the Senate and House budgets after may be using different formulas that potentially shift the percentages back off of Chapter 70, back off of the towns and shift a little bit more responsibility to Chapter 70. Currently, what has happened in the new foundation formula is the state is trying to shift a greater percentage of responsibility to the minimum local contributions of the towns and reduce the amount they're increasing Chapter 70 increase the amount that they're charging the towns for the minimum local contributions. The big pushes for regional districts that we're crying out for assistance. There's an alliance of special education right now that's pushing for full funding of circuit breaker. I know that Dr. DeFalco just recently signed a letter to Senator Fatman and also Representative Soter, and hopefully that will gain some traction in the offices. And the other piece is, again, trying to appeal for full regional transportation reimbursement, which nobody is really optimistic that that's going to happen. But the circuit breaker is a big push this year.
Because, right now it's at 70?
Right now, the circuit breaker is at about, they're estimating 68%.
68?
67, 68.
And full funding is 75.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
what's-
their definition
Their
of full
definition of full
Right,
funding.
Yeah.
Full would
Full
be
funding would be
Full
100%.
and it's 75% above
Right.
four times, never mind. I'm not
Above
even
4
gonna-
times,
I'm not even
exactly.
going to get into it. But do we know what the transportation reimbursement is at right now?
Right now, they're saying that it's 76%, but the first round of math is showing that it doesn't look like it's actually 76%. Slightly lower.
So, if one is inclined to contact a representative,
Yes.
a big push would be for
Circuit breaker
Circuit breaker.
funding and regional
regional
transportation.
Because right now, all of the Chapter 70 ideas out there are really not going to,
Yeah.
none of them are going to win.
Because they don't even agree with each other.
Correct.
And so, Sarah and Matt, is this, at this point, we're still reaching out to our local people, not the Ways and Means
Right.
or whoever we reached out to at some point last year, right?
I believe we were reaching out to Ways and Means when they went.
It was
in-
further
When it
into
went
the
in.
Yeah,
process.
like, that was way later.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
right now, and you can always, is it Senator Peisch, or is it Representative Peisch that's on?
Representative Peisch.
Yeah. Like, hi, remember us in the regional school committee? Don't forget us,
Please.
please.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Well,
Matt. That's my
it's-
report.
And now it's Matt's report.
Excellent. So just going through our regular overview of the finances, the first sheet that we discuss is the salary spend down. If you take note of the bottom line, which I'd like to go straight to on the salary spend down, that's the one with the pretty yellow border. I think it's the back. If you take note, we're still showing a balance, which means that we're not running into a deficit right now or estimating that we will be running into a deficit on the grand total of salaries. And the percent of budget spent to date on salaries is 49.72%, which would indicate that we're in a good place for slightly past the half a year mark. A couple of points that might stand out. The custodial costs, we've been dealing with some personal time issues and illness within our custodial staff, and that has increased the amount that we've had to spend on a salary basis. The issues, again, I don't want to keep repeating the beginning of the year, which contributed significantly to the overtime in that category either. But otherwise, as I said, there are a few variances, but we're in a healthy position for salaries right now. Are there any questions specifically about it? Right. The cost center review is your very colorful spreadsheet, which we try to wake everybody up with. Also, things are still going according to plan with respect to the cost center review. It was asked earlier, a few things to note with respect to where we would be seeing red. The school committee function code looks like it's in the red. That has to do with the additional financial support that was provided for the end of the year report, that the accounting services is a subsection of the school committee. The school leadership there were some adjustments, which is not significant, but if you look at the 2210 line, it's like almost 10,000. There were some adjustments after the budget to salaries in the school leadership line. The other big piece, which is worth noting, is that the transportation services, which says we're looking at about 71,000 under, that is looking like we are going to be under budgeted on that line. So looking at what's encumbered and what the actual costs of the transportation are on a monthly basis, I have calculated that it's more accurate that we will be going into the red on that line. So I can't speak for what was budgeted, but I can say that it is looking like it's accurate. That being said, we do have the transportation reimbursement, which helps with this, but that is calculated into the budget. So hopefully, we'll be able to get some larger reimbursements for next year. And
Is the expectation that this red number is going to go up?
I don't think that the number is going to continue to get larger. It may go down slightly, but my expectation is that there will be a red number there.
Okay.
No, that's perfect.
So, and have you cross-referenced our transportation contract versus what we had budgeted?
Yes.
And what else is in this, I feel like we've asked this question before, and I don't mean to repeat it, but I just don't remember the answer. Is all of the transportation in this line for even athletics, music, extracurricular? Whereas this line may have only been budgeted just for school day transportation? I don't remember if we talked about that. I know I thought it once or twice.
And I may have to do some further digging on that to break out every single line that's covered in the transportation. I know that there's some of the costs are not in that line, that they're distributed to like the vehicle lines, and some of it is to the other programs, to the other non-public programs. But I will clarify that, so I apologize.
Should
Which is
athletics
also a big
transportation
red
be
number.
in that line?
No, well,
No.
it depends. It could
Right.
be if that's where we want it to be, but I
Right.
don't believe I believe our transportation line in the large packet we
Yeah.
get from the budget, I believe that it is just
I think so.
I think you're
Monday
right.
through Friday transportation. So if, when we created this, we were putting all of it in, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
somewhere else we're going to see a positive.
Well, I have to double check. Yeah, I have to double check to see, just to make sure that all of the budgeted lines are captured in the budgeted section, and all of the expenditure lines are captured in the expenditure section. That could be a function of
Just
how
wait.
it's aggregating the group.
We
So I
might be
just wanna make
surprised
sure-
that
Yep, it
we might find it,
Yep.
because I do believe, back to Sarah's
Not
question.
that I like to be wrong, but that
No,
would be terrific.
no, I think it was just a different way of looking at it. It's all going to, what we're paying is transportation.
Yeah.
And we just never budgeted it all to that line. That 3,300 was regular day transportation.
Because I remember looking at the athletics, and that
Yeah.
number had the busing built into it.
Correct.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
does.
correct. Yeah.
But then there are, I believe, and I don't want to be, I'm going to say, don't quote me, but I believe music, there's some in
Transportation.
one budget and some in another, and I think there's actually another one that the BMMA pays, so it's,
Yeah. No, this
It
is
could just be-
this is helpful. As I said, I can definitely do a much deeper dive into this, and I will try to have that sorted out for the next time.
we can hope.
I did go and look at I did check the transportation costs in the contract versus what's budgeted.
Yeah.
So that piece is a little bit off. That being said, I'm not sure, I have to go back and check which is being aggregated into the expenditures part. So I'll try to tease all of it out.
Just a thought,
specifically.
I'm sorry, I didn't mention it before. I feel like I wanted to, and I never got there, so.
That's perfectly fine. The only other piece that I also want to look into a little further, the 4130 line on the next page, like the utility services. If you take a look, it looks like we've only expended 180,000 and we've encumbered a significant amount more. I'd like to check, we recently started doing some purchasing of net meter credits, which started, and we're getting rebates on the electricity that we purchase because we buy the credits and we purchase the credits for 80% of what we're getting the credits for. So I need to check to see whether or not we've just over encumbered currently or whether or not this is part of what we're anticipating the spending to be.
Okay.
So it's another area that I want to make sure that I get a little further into is that utility services. Any questions? And as always, any specific line item questions, I can be emailed and make sure that I dig up the information. The revenue report, again, developing. We did separate, I know the last time the debt service assessments weren't separated, what we were budgeting for them. They are budgeted for on the top now. So now on the top of this page for the revenue, you'll see all of the anticipated revenues that we have based on our assessments, Chapter 70, transportation reimbursements, even the program revenues for athletics. And that should show you things are going pretty smoothly. We're at a place where we've collected approximately 60% of the anticipated revenues, which is where we should be at for this time of the year. The other revenues on the bottom are not, they're not budgeted for, or they weren't budgeted for. It looks like that's a tremendous amount. One of the things that contributes to that is the entire cafeteria fund, which is our Fund 20. So that actually is separately funded, so all of the revenue goes to paying off all of the salaries and benefits for that group, and it's a pretty big, it's a wash. So.
Is the early childhood, the revenue 262 early childhood, is that the preschool?
The early childhood yes. Mm-hmm. The 262, that's from, that's from the grant that we receive currently, 262. It's not from the Department of Ed, it's from the Department of Early Childhood Education, yeah. But I think this is actually, that, I can double check actually to make sure, because if that is not, I'm wondering if there may be some collected revenue in there as well.
That's what I'm
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering, yeah, because
Yep.
Maybe it was just deposited to that line.
Yeah, that could be.
Because if not, there's no revenue from the pre-K. And
Is that
that-
the
yep.
inclusive preschool, three, yeah. I'm wondering if it just went into the line above. The
Yeah, we
266.
were actually, Patty and I were talking about that, and I'm not sure if we actually addressed it already after this got printed,
Gotcha.
because this came out a little while ago, but I know that we had looked at it. So I'll get an answer for all of the pre-K revenue as well, too. The personnel update, there are some significant personnel updates. I won't report out on them, but if there are any.
Well, so, no, I have a concern, and that is the food service director
Yeah.
resignation. And that person is part-time,
It
Yes.
is, yep,
and it's not shared anymore with another district. It's just part-time with us.
yes.
Correct.
And her recommendation is that it needs to be more than that?
Yeah, actually, we had an exit interview with her yesterday, and she's going to stay on until April, and has committed to helping, actually come in 1 or 2 days a month even after that, to help with the ordering and the reconciling of the money and such, and also train whoever comes on. But her strong recommendation was, if we are going to run a food service program like the one we have, the individual needs to be here full-time.
So
She highlighted like very specific reasons for that.
So will she propose, so we usually hear from that person at the end of the year, kind of, here's how it went, here's the money we need, here's the increase of lunch or whatever. Will she propose that in the review of their budget? I mean, how do we do, because we don't ever set the food service budget,
Yeah, she shared
per se.
She shared with us that she referenced particularly snacks. She said overall our costs are very, very, what we charge is very, very low, but she referenced specifically with me that the amount that we are charging for snacks is, and
That came out in the audit that
Yeah.
we just recently had. And I can work, I'll probably be working with her as she transitions out. I've overseen a lot of aspects of the food service.
Jason,
food
can you
service
finish
program.
your sentence?
I'm
The
sorry.
snacks are
Low?
Cheap.
too cheap, okay.
they're too cheap,
You
I'm
just, you
sorry.
sort of,
Yeah.
Matt sort
We
of
need to
got in
charge
there, so
more
I
for our
didn't know what
snacks.
happened.
You need to charge more for the snacks.
that's what she was basically.
I just, for a point of reference, I'd be very interested to hear where the work is for the, more than the part-time, because I'm going to say that it was over 10 years that our last director was part-time and never sat at our table at the end of a year saying she needed more time.
So let me ask you a question. So how many years did we have chicken patties on Thursday? I'm being somewhat like
You mean
facetious.
that generic, like you knew
Yeah.
every Friday was pizza?
I think some of the challenges, it's hard to manage change when you're not here. And so what ends up being ordered and the new items being tried is not what ends up getting cooked and served, because the individual is here twice a week. So what the
So
changes
they're not following the menu?
by
is a
sure,
menu.
that's a good way to say it.
Okay.
And other things, I think one of the things that so the nutrition part of this work is actually really important, because if you give the kids high sugar, high carb, yucky food, come 10 o'clock in the morning, they're going to sugar crash after breakfast, and they're going to have all kinds of issues with learning and discipline and all that other stuff. So I think part of the issue was there was some work trying to be done to make the menu more healthy and try some different options. And it may not sound like a big piece, but when you're trying to enact
Well,
change
no,
and
but I'm sure you remember it in the Obama years. Mrs. Obama, the first lady,
Yeah, I do, yeah.
she implemented a very strict nutrition where the birthday parties and the Valentine party, everything was taken out of the classroom. And again, our part-time food we accepted that policy, that we were going to follow the guidelines of that, and there were a lot of changes in that time frame. So again, I would just really be interested to see where that work is needed. Now, mind you, when it was Jean Sheridan, she was working. So you're saying 2.5 days. She was here at the beginning of my time. She was Bellingham
yeah.
for 2.5 days, but everything was, I believe we all had the same menu, and that work was being done, but we were probably benefiting from her full-time work, where we were splitting it with that other district. I actually don't recall ever knowing that she went from one to another, but all of a sudden she was
She did a cushion it.
Cushnet,
Yep.
I was going to say south, yeah. So, but again, she never, and actually Steve could attest to this, because it wasn't ever a need. It wasn't something it was working well. It was working very well. So now it's only been 4 or 5 months that she's gone, and it's not working well. So I would just be very curious to see the bigger picture of that.
I mean, it could be that because the new person is new, you know, sort of when you're 10 years in, you have structures, you can
And the
delegate to your
people know you.
person that can help you out, and if that hasn't been developed, that could obviously increase what the main person is doing,
Well,
if you
and I-
don't trust someone to delegate to yet, you know.
I also think there's some value in really looking at what that person's, you know, job, because I would really like to hear from this person. You know, you had an exit interview, but what are the duties that she thinks fall behind, other than, you know, the oversight of not seeing what's, because I know, Mrs. Sheridan, when we tried to do the lunch policy, and if the kids owed more money, you know, just kind of didn't want any part of being the person who reaches out to the families, and, you know, if you had a full-time person, maybe they have some time to do, you know, some of the other pieces that perhaps weren't done. But I don't think I don't, as a member of this committee, have a really good sense of what that person does. Like, I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
their job
So
description or.
the position used to be shared with another district?
Yes.
What happened to the other district?
Bellingham went full-time.
They
They went full-time.
person went
Yeah.
full-time.
But what happened to Acushnet when, because she fully retired, right?
No, she went
No, she
full-time
went
to
full-time.
Dartmouth, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she went full-time to another.
So maybe they
South Coast.
hired their own part-time person. I feel like we never got that information. But, again, I think I would just be curious to hear.
Yeah, I'd
And
just
like
like
you
to
said,
know.
see
I'm
the
not
job
saying-
job
yeah,
description.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying we need or we don't need. I don't know what they do. I don't
Yeah.
And I'd like to know what other districts
do.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get that information. I have a list, actually. Part of our discussion with her yesterday was she provided a list of, it's just that. Like, she actually had like a 2-column
Great.
list of all of the responsibilities that she does. And we asked her to then develop a transition plan between now and April, and then April to the end of the year, of things that need to get done, to make sure nothing gets dropped.
Okay. Thank you. And everybody else is who they is. Anything else, Matt?
Facilities?
Facilities, oh yeah, turn the page. You got 10
Just a-
minutes, I'm limiting you.
Just a very, I get limited.
Because you're later in the game.
Exactly.
Maybe I should maybe I should get taken out of order.
Yeah, maybe next time.
Just a brief update, the Millville Elementary schematic design's going well. I actually just received today a project schedule from the designers for how they're laying out the entire schedule from the design phase through the completed construction phase. It's very preliminary, so they just sent it to me today to ask me to look at it. So I can share that with the committee via Dr. DeFalco later this week. And the JFK project is moving along. The sub-bids for the project are going to be due on the February 15th. It's been put out, and the general contracting bid for the entire oversight of the project the bids are due on February 22nd. So the hope is to have a bulk of that project done through the summer. There is talk that, given the back order on windows, we may have to push up into figuring out a work schedule for the school year. But
Which has been done before.
yeah.
Not without a lot of complaining.
Everybody's going to Millville.
Yeah, exactly.
When I get further clarification on that timeline, I will
Let's hope
certainly
windows come
share
in
that
fast.
Thank you.
with the committee.
Do you have an update on the high school fire alarm?
Yep. I have not heard back from the representative this week. I can check in, but they were supposed to have completed the designs by the end of this week. So they should be well on their way, if not have just completed the design of the system.
And just out of curiosity, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, you can always email me, or how often are they checking the smoke alarms that are in the classrooms at this point? Since it's not a connected system, with alarms were placed in each classroom because
The fire
the
department,
system is not operating.
I know the company that's designing the system
Yeah,
is
so what's
not-
in
So the
place right now?
backup
it
plan
would
right
be-
now.
It's been in there for a year now, because it was last winter, last Christmas break, when I believe the superintendent was notified that the system failed. And smoke alarms were put in each classroom.
It was my understanding from conversations that the system actually started working again. I can check, I'll check with the chief. But he, originally, we were told that it had failed, and then it was actually back online, though it was, like, they were worried about it, so we still needed to replace it.
Yeah, the
Have you
last,
heard it? Have you heard it? I'm just curious.
the last conversation we had was that the existing system is functioning fine while we're putting the new system.
Yeah. That was,
Existing
Yeah, but
as
existing
in.
could be smoke
existing-
fire alarms.
the existing could be the smoke
system,
alarms, correct.
Which was
yeah.
put in as
Yeah.
a temporary fix.
Right.
Yeah. So I
So to
apologize.
Aaron's
That's-
point,
The panel does not work. Like, if the fire department shows up, it doesn't tell them
where the issue
when,
is.
when, sorry, Chief Sweeney came and presented to us. He said the people in the building are safer now in the building. But if something happened at night when nobody's there, that building is, I wouldn't leave anything valuable in your office. Like, there's nothing
Nothing calls
calling
the fire
the fire
department.
department.
Thank you for that.
So I do believe that's the system he's talking about. But I'm just curious how often they're checking.
That I'm not.
If we're relying on the smoke alarms, are we checking the smoke
Correct.
alarms?
It's been a year. Have the batteries been replaced when we changed our
Et
clocks?
cetera.
That's my question.
And when do we expect that work to be done? Like, the design is by the end of the week, but what's the,
Because we were originally told last summer.
I thought it
Right.
was over the
It was
the
supposed to be
summer.
last summer. So
It
now,
wasn't even out
No,
to
no,
bid.
no, for the summer.
no, it wasn't.
Yeah, no.
It was approved at town meetings, and they
We got it out to
were,
bid in like, was it
they
put
were,
it-
this or something?
they
Yeah.
assured us it could be in over the summer. And yes,
I
at
thought
town
it
meeting.
was over a break,
Blackstone town
I
meeting
thought it
had a
was
very
Christmas.
intense
Christmas break.
That's what I thought.
conversation.
There may have been a ball dropped somewhere, because I put it out to bid
Well-
this past year,
Yeah,
yeah.
we did it when
Yeah.
you first started in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think we thought it was going to go in over Christmas break.
Oh.
Yeah. So can we, I guess the basic
get an
question is, can you
update.
get an overall update, including if we're counting on smoke alarms, that they're not chirping?
Yeah, certainly can.
Okay.
Really tripping.
That little sound.
Yeah.
You don't want the chirping.
Okay. You're, okay. Thank you. You did.
Have any other hidden
did well.
reports?
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
School committee forum, I did receive a request from the high school. The school committee grants a BMR school committee scholarship. We've done 2 at $500 each the last, I don't know how many years, probably a very long time. And the question is, would we like to do that again? And if so, what would we like the amount to be? And if so, would we like to choose the recipients or have the BMR scholarship committee choose?
Yes, we definitely want to do it again.
Okay.
I don't know
And
about
keep the amount the same,
Sure.
Let the scholarship committee decide.
and let the scholarship committee.
They have our guidelines.
They do.
I think that
We have
Okay.
official guidelines? Okay.
We do.
we do. It's printed when you go to awards night. It tells you the qualifications for or that they look for when
Okay.
granting it.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have, other than hope the semester is going well, and I hope for snow days for the seniors and none for the rest of us.
I just want to say congratulations to the senior athletes that are completing their seasons, their final high school seasons, and good luck to them if they are playing in college.
Aaron?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Nothing from me.
I just wanted to say that I attended a Summit Learning Tour. Was it last week? All the meetings are blurring together on me. And I'd encourage parents and teachers and school committee members to go check it out. I had a teacher actually show me her screen. I mean, it's not all on the computers, but I'm like, how does this platform actually look? Because I didn't know. And she actually showed me how on one assignment or project, it puts the standards, like, it shows you where there are kids struggling to meet a standard based on that assignment. And it shows kids who are, surpassing it, and it actually gives you can scroll down and it gives you different resources you can use for the students who are struggling and the students who need, I think they called it the spicy version of the next lesson, where it would give them more challenging work. So I think it would be, in my opinion, it looks like a great tool for differentiating instruction. There are still things to be ironed out, like is it a good fit for our district specifically, how it would be implemented. But, we really need to look for more tools and for personalized learning. So it was really interesting, and I encourage more people to learn about it.
Does anyone know when the next tour is? Is there a next tour?
I can find that out.
I think it was about every other month back in the fall, but.
Yes.
All right, our next meeting, February 21st at 4:30 is a budget workshop. And then February 27th at 5 o'clock, there's a policy committee meeting, and 6 o'clock, a budget workshop. And our next regularly scheduled school committee meeting is March 13th at 6 o'clock. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, not to return, to adjourn from executive session for the purpose of conducting strategy with respect to collective bargaining and personnel issues.
So moved.
Moved by Tammy,
Second?
second by Sarah.
Yes.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yep.
Okay, thank you.